First up, I had the teen comedy that made baked goods legendary. American Pie follows four high school guys on a mission to lose their virginity, starring Jason Biggs, Allison Hannigan, and Eugene Levy in a coming-of-age classic that's crude, chaotic, and weirdly heartfelt. Welcome to the film that launched 1,000 awkward teen comedies and made baked goods feel violated. This was one of the first DVDs I ever owned, and when I had my apartment and I couldn't afford cable, this one just played on repeat. It follows Jason Biggs and his friends on a desperate, clumsy, and just completely hormone-fueled quest to lose their virginity before graduation. It's raunchy, it's loud, it's oddly sincere. Yes, there's the infamous pie scene. Yes, there's Stifler, the human embodiment of Miller High Life and bad decisions, but there's also a surprisingly sweet core beneath all the gross-out gags, especially with the moments with Allison Hannigan's this one time at band camp Michelle. I think Eugene Levy steals every scene as Jim's painfully supportive dad, just delivering sex ed lectures that should be banned, and yet they are kind of wholesome. And sure, some of the jokes now land with more unintentional humor, but American Pie still captures that weird mix of teenage panic and friendship and the idea that growing up is equal parts confusing and sexy. I mean, American Pie walked so every modern teen comedy could run and possibly trip over its shoelaces. This movie is crude and chaotic, somehow charming, and just perfect with a slice of apple pie. Here, Wes Craven turns a home invasion flick into a twisted, satirical nightmare. The People Under the Stairs follows a kid who breaks into a creepy house in the neighborhood and quickly finds out that the real horror isn't just what's inside, it's what's under the stairs. Wes Craven would take a break from slashers and dive headfirst into horror here with a splash of social satire. This isn't just a haunted house movie, it's a full-blown descent into suburban nightmares, complete with cannibals, creepy homeowners, and kids living in the walls. Our hero here is Fool, a street-smart kid who breaks into a spooky mansion with some local thieves, and what starts as a burglary quickly turns into a rescue mission when he discovers this twisted couple, displayed with terrifying glee by Everett McGill and Wendy Robbie, are just hiding their many dark secrets behind their locked doors. There are traps, secret tunnels, shotgun chases, and one truly unsettling gimp suit. I remember watching this at the second run theater by my house, and then just countless times on cable. This was like one of those teen adventure movies wrapped in a horror flick, and we all just loved it. We all had that house in our neighborhood that kind of felt like it could be the one from this movie. I think here Craven mixes horror and humor like a mad scientist, creating something both creepy and strangely enjoyable. It's bonkers in all the best ways and unlike anything else in the genre. Now, if 8 legs give you the creeps, then brace yourself. Arachnophobia is here to tap dance on your spine. Directed by Frank Marshall, this horror comedy sees Jeff Daniels and John Goodman taking on a small-town spider invasion with laughs and shrieks and a flamethrower or two. This horror comedy hybrid drops the South American spider into small-town America, and suddenly, every corner of your house feels like a threat. Here, Jeff Daniels plays a doctor who's deeply afraid of spiders, which is a great start, and then John Goodman shows up as the gloriously over-the-top exterminator who really steals the movie with every bug-crushing line that he delivers, and together they battle 8-legged assassins while trying not to freak out, which is something they routinely fail at as this invasion escalates. The film really does walk a tightrope between being funny and terrifying, and somehow it pulls it off flawlessly. I mean, one minute you're laughing at Goodman's bug-squashing swagger, then the next you're checking your shoes for surprises before you put them on to go to the bathroom. I remember watching this movie in the theater and people were just freaking out and having a complete blast with it. The tone here is part Spielbergian adventure and part Saturday Night Creep Fest, and I think what makes Arachnophobia just work is its restraint until it doesn't. The spiders are real, no CGI here for the most part, and I think that realism just makes the scares land much harder. It's not about giant monsters, it's about one spider crawling into your popcorn bucket, call it a thrillomedy, call it spider core, just don't watch it in the dark with a ball of popcorn. Wayne's World would bring Mike Myers and Dana Carvey's beloved SNL duo to the big screen for the masses, where their public access show would soon collide with fame, capitalism, and Alice Cooper. It's a head-banging, slang-slinging ode to friendship and 90s rock culture, just filled with nostalgic cameos. It would all start in a basement and somehow become a cultural phenomenon. Wayne's World, based on the SNL sketch, is a rock and roll comedy where public access TV meets corporate greed and two slackers with great hair who just want to stay true to themselves and their playlists. Myers and Carvey are Wayne and Garth, lovable dorks who speak fluent pop culture and just want to party. When their little show gets picked up by a sleazy executive played perfectly by Rob Lowe, they're thrust into the big leagues and quickly learn fame does come with strings. But what makes Wayne's World work isn't just the catchphrases. To me, it's the weird sincerity beneath the silliness. These guys genuinely love the music, they love each other, and their bizarre little world. I think Penelope Spheris' direction just nails the tone perfectly. It breaks the fourth wall, it features dream sequences with Tia Carrere, and includes a Bohemian Rhapsody headbanging scene that just basically brought Queen back from the dead. This was another movie I remember seeing in the theater and then on cable just countless times. We quoted it frequently throughout high school. It's goofy, it's remarkably quotable, and just surprisingly sweet. And Wayne's World didn't just spoof the 90s, it kind of helped define them. Adam Sandler turns golf into a contact sport in Happy Gilmore, where hockey brawls meet country clubs and Shooter McGavin gets what's coming to him. It's directed by Dennis Duggan, and it's the sports comedy where Sandler gets his ass kicked by Bob Barker, and somehow that's not even the wildest part of this movie. Now, if golf ever needed a hero, it certainly wouldn't be Happy Gilmore, but we're glad he showed up anyways. Adam Sandler stars as a failed hockey player who discovers he can drive golf balls like Thor throws hammers. The result? A sports comedy that's aggressively dumb and undeniably hilarious. Happy Gilmore just turns country clubs into war zones. I watched this movie so many times growing up. I would always try my Gilmore drive at the range. I actually remember cracking my friend's dad's Callaway driver and having to pay him back $150, which at the time might as well have been $1,500. Regardless, though, in this movie, Happy's temper is legendary, his swing is chaos incarnate, and his idea of golf etiquette includes throwing hands with Bob Barker and somehow losing. It's just a beautiful comedy. Christopher McDonald steals every scene as Shooter McGavin, the smug villain that we love to hate, who eats pieces of crap for breakfast. There's also Carl Weathers as Happy's one-handed coach, a grandma who just wants her house back. This movie is absurd from start to finish, but it's got heart, and Sandler's underdog charm carries it through every putt, punch, and profanity-laced tirade. Happy Gilmore to me is just really the perfect blend of childish humor and adult rage. It may not improve your golf game, but it will absolutely improve your day. Here, James Cameron makes a love story so big, only an iceberg can sink it. In Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet steam up the screen and capture the world's hearts as Jack and Rose, star-crossed lovers aboard the most famous shipwreck in history, and a double VHS movie that nearly every home in the country had stuffed into their cluttered entertainment centers. Here, James Cameron built a boat, crashed it into an iceberg, and created one of the most iconic romances in cinematic history. Now, I'll be honest, I was never a huge fan of this movie as a teen. I've grown to appreciate it a little bit more as I've gotten older. I do remember the second tape of the VHS copy was the better one because it's pretty much all sinking ship from there, with all the mushy stuff being swapped out with delightful chaos and just heartache and suspense. The Titanic is part historical epic, it's part teen heartache and part disaster movie, and it had enough box office power to make every other studio jealous for a decade. Leonardo DiCaprio is Jack, the scrappy artist who wins a ticket aboard the doomed ship. Kate Winslet is Rose, the wealthy fiancée with too much jewelry and not enough freedom. Together, they draw naked, they dance in the steerage, and fall in love right before everything turns into a giant cold swimming pool. I think the effects still hold up great. I mean, that ship breaking in half, it's brutal. The final plunge into the sea, it's chilling here. Cameron's eye for detail is obsessive, I think, and it really shows with just every steam pipe and life jacket. And sure, this movie gave us I'm the King of the World, and that door debate still divides the internet, but the Titanic also gave us a sweeping, tragic love story that managed to be both deeply personal and larger than life. It's the kind of film that dares you to roll your eyes, then will make you cry anyways, but we all must remember the most important aspect of this movie. Jack could have fit on that door. You know it, and I know it. The Pixar toy box opened in 1995 and animated cinema would be changed forever. Toy Story, directed by John Lasseter, introduced us to Tom Hanks's Woody, Tim Allen's Buzz, and a Pixar-powered world where your childhood toys have feelings and the emotional range to prove it. Before Toy Story, the biggest drama in animation was who got to be king of the jungle. Then came Pixar and gave us talking toys with emotional baggage, and the game would be changed forever. This one introduced us to Woody, a pull-string cowboy whose world is turned upside down when shiny new Buzz Lightyear arrives on the scene. Suddenly, Woody's no longer top toy in Andy's room, and of course, he doesn't handle it well, and what follows is part buddy comedy, part existential crisis, part high-stakes toy rescue mission, and just all adventure. Woody and Buzz go from rivals to reluctant allies to best friends, and somewhere along the way you realize you're just way too emotionally invested in a plastic space ranger's friendship with a stuffed cowboy. Now, visually, Toy Story was revolutionary. It was the first full-length feature film made entirely of CGI, but to me, it's the writing, the humor, and the heart that made it a classic. From Mr. Potato Head's sass to Rex's anxious roars, every toy gets a moment. Every adult watching finds themselves unknowingly connecting back to their inner child. I've never been a huge fan of animated movies, but this one was the total package. It's not just a kids movie, it's a story about growing up and being replaced and finding your place in a changing world, all wrapped up in a vibrantly nostalgic adventure. Jim Carrey trades slapstick for soul in The Truman Show, where director Peter Weir turns paranoia into art. Truman thinks his life is too perfect because it is. He's the unwitting star of a 24/7 reality show, and it's time for him to finally break free. Imagine waking up one day and realizing your whole life is a reality show. Cameras in the bathroom, fake best friends, even your wife's product placement monologues. That is The Truman Show, a deeply clever and just oddly touching dramedy starring Jim Carrey in what I'd consider to be a career-defining role for him. He plays Truman Burbank, a charming insurance salesman who starts suspecting that things are a little off. The sky doesn't quite look right. The same people walk by at the same time every day, and his wife keeps pitching kitchen goods like she's auditioning for QVC, and what follows is a slow burning unraveling as Truman just peels back the set of walls to his perfect life, and I think it's as charming as it is intriguing to see unfold. I think Laura Linney is great here as the Stepford wife turned hostage. Ed Harris is great as well as Kristoff, the show's godlike creator, but to me, the brilliance of The Truman Show is how it mixes comedy and existential dread like peanut butter and jelly. It's funny, sure, but it also taps into that universal fear of what if none of this is real? This movie came out before the reality TV era exploded, so it kind of feels eerily prophetic now. I think this movie just quietly runs the full spectrum. I mean, acting, writing, direction, cinematography, scoring, all just perfect for the tone, and in the end, Truman's journey from passive viewer to free thinking rebel is just surprisingly rewarding. And when he touches the edge of his world and chooses to walk out, that's not just a great moment, it's a mic drop for the human spirit and easily one of Carrey's most iconic scenes. In Menace to Society, the Hughes brothers deliver a gritty, no punches pulled look at life in South Central LA, following Kane and O-Dog, played with a fierce intensity by Tyrone Turner and Lorenz Tate as they try to escape the cycle of violence before it swallows them whole. Now, Menace to Society is not here to sugarcoat anything. Directed by the Hughes brothers and truly just a fearless debut, this movie opens with a liquor store scene that's as shocking as it is unforgettable, and from there it only gets more intense. Set in the neighborhoods of Watts and Crenshaw, the film follows Kane, played with what I think is a quiet complexity by Tyrone Turner. He's a teenager wrestling with survival, loyalty, and whether he's got a way out or if he's already in just too deeply entrenched in a predetermined future. Then there's Lorenz Tate as O-Dog, who gives one of the most chillingly charismatic performances in 90s cinema. He's funny, shows glimpses of charm, he's also terrifying and unpredictable, all within the same breath. He's a true cinematic wild card in this movie. The whole thing just feels dangerously real, like a documentary that forgets to turn the camera off. I think the Hughes brothers shoot this movie with just an emotionally raw power that will pull you in. There's no glamour in the violence. It's bloody, it's chaotic, it really does hurt. I remember seeing this movie in the theater and just being glued to the screen. It builds a foreboding uneasiness and leaves you with more questions than answers, and that's kind of the point. Menace to Society isn't just a hood film, it's an unrelenting, kind of boots on the ground snapshot of just systemic failure, youth under pressure, and choices made with no good options. The movie that just grabs you by the collar and demands that you look, and it's certainly a lot to take in, but it's also essential viewing. So what do you get when John Travolta and Nicolas Cage literally swap faces? In John Woo's action fever dream Face Off, it's identity theft with doves and explosions and peak 90s insanity, directed with slow motion flair and starring two actors in full go big or go home mode. Now, when you hear John Travolta and Nicolas Cage are swapping faces, you might assume it's a Saturday Night Live sketch gone too far, but it isn't. It's Face Off, a real movie directed by action maestro John Woo, and it's every bit as wild as it sounds. Travolta plays FBI agent Sean Archer, Cage is terrorist Castor Troy, and thanks to sci-fi surgery and zero HIPAA oversight, they become one another in a bullet-soaked identity crisis with rocket launchers, racing boats, and doves. This movie was the era before superheroes hogged every summer. My friends and I all went to see this movie like 3 or 4 times, and we just ate it up like free pudding. I mean, Cage was closing out his 90s action run. Travolta was on a resurgent. It had big time stars, it had big time action, and yet it's not just about the action. It's performance art with explosions. I mean, Cage kicks the film off with a hallelujah enriched gusto, while Travolta tries to keep it serious. But I mean, once the face swap happens, it's game on. Travolta goes full Cage. Cage channels unhinged grief like he's trying to win an Oscar and a WWE belt. It's one of the most entertaining cases of actor role reversal in cinematic history, and John Woo directs this one like a ballet with bullets. It's got slow motion standoffs, mirrored shootouts, and a satisfying boat chase to bring it all home. It's ridiculous, it's operatic, endlessly quotable, and somehow it works. And to me, Face Off is peak 90s excess in all the best ways. In House Party, Reginald Hudlin would let Kid and Play throw the ultimate teenage bash, complete with dance battles, awkward teen romance, parent dodging, high school bullies, and high top fade excellence in a hip hop comedy that's all about the fun, the music, the friends, and of course the footwork. Now, House Party is what happens when you mix dance battles with parental disobedience and peak 90s fashion into one wild, feel good night of fun. This comedy has the simplest of blueprints. Play wants to throw the ultimate party. Kid wants to go, but he's grounded by his hilariously furious dad, played by the late, great Robin Harris. Cue the stealth mission, a fun, high-energy journey through the neighborhood and a party so iconic it features an all-time dance battle that still gets referenced to this day. Kid's towering high-top fade is a character in itself, and Play brings the smooth talk, the swagger, and more than a few just hilariously questionable pickup lines. I love Martin Lawrence in this movie. He's just full manic energy mode here as the DJ with zero filter and dragon breath for days, while Full Force plays the least intimidating bullies that you've ever seen in crop tops and Jordans. The humor here ranges from slapstick to snarky to surreal to clever at times, but I think underneath all the laughs, House Party captures just the essence of youthful teen freedom and community. It's not just about a party, it's about that feeling of being young and wild and just cool enough to get away with it. The soundtrack is loaded with jams, the fashion is outrageous in the best of ways, the chemistry between Kid and Play just gives the whole thing an effortlessly laid-back charm. House Party isn't just a time capsule. I think it's a cultural landmark, and nearly 35 years later, it still knows how to get the whole room dancing. John Woo would set the screen ablaze in Hard Boiled, an operatic Hong Kong action blitz starring Chow Yun-fat as a no-nonsense cop with a collection of pistols and more bullets than dialogue, in a movie that just helped redefine the action genre mayhem. John Woo's Hard Boiled, to me, is just a beautiful mashup of slow-motion bullets, jazz solos, and unfiltered cool. I mean, released at the height of Hong Kong action cinema, this gem stars Chow Yun-fat as Tequila. He's a cop who plays his clarinet at night in the club and dual wields his pistols during the day. The plot here, honestly, it doesn't really matter. There's some stuff about arms dealers. There's an undercover cop played by Tony Leung who's just in peak brooding mode here, and a criminal syndicate as well that's operating out of this hospital. But to me, the plot in Hard Boiled is really just a loose string that ties together some of the most dazzling and over-the-top action sequences ever filmed. From the tea house shootout at the opening scene, where Tequila's just blowing away dozens of goons while sliding down stair railings, to the film's near 40-minute climax in a maternity ward, Hard Boiled turns just carnage into choreography, into just effortless, elegant violence. It's a gun ballet, there's glass shattering and explosions erupting like kids on prom night. Woo's trademarks are all over this movie. There's doves flying in slow motion, impossible reloads, and characters that stare into each other's souls before unleashing mayhem. I think Chow Yun-fat is perfect here. He's smooth, he's dangerous, and somehow always in the right place with a gun in each hand and a one-liner in his back pocket. This is honestly, though, more than an action movie. I mean, to me, Hard Boiled is kind of like a symphony of destruction, and it plays loudly. I remember stumbling onto this movie one night on cable as a teenager. It blew me away then, and I always looked for it after that. It's always been a movie that stuck with me since. I don't think Hard Boiled just raised the bar for shootouts. I think it somersaulted over it, tossed it up in the air, and then shot it in the face. Nora Ephron's Sleepless in Seattle brings together Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in a coast-to-coast romance leap of faith where one grieving dad, one curious radio DJ, and one perfectly timed Empire State Building meeting captured the hearts of audiences worldwide. Now, if Sleepless in Seattle doesn't melt the cockles of your heart, then you might be missing cockles altogether. Directed by the great Nora Ephron and starring rom-com royalty Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, this movie practically wrote the blueprint for 90s romance. Hanks here plays Sam Baldwin. He's a grieving widower whose son calls a radio show to help his dad find love again, and the result is, conveniently, women all over the country start falling for Sam's gentle and emotionally available voice. One of those listeners is Meg Ryan's Annie, who becomes so captivated she hops a plane and low-key stalks this man across the country, yet somehow, because it's the movies, we still root for her. It's also because it's Meg Ryan. It was the 90s, and she was basically the human form of romantic hope and perfect hair. Now, to be clear, Sam and Annie only spend about 3 to maybe 4 minutes of actual screen time together. Most of their romance is built on vibes and fate and the firm belief that if something feels right, it more than likely is. It's a love story built around longing and letters and wistful voiceovers. It's basically the prequel to online dating with sweet Empire State Building meetups instead of Tinder swipes. I think Efron here, though, does balance all the sugar with the wit, and the emotional payoff is somehow enormous despite the minimal direct interaction between these characters, which really is further proof that chemistry doesn't always need dialogue. Sometimes it just needs good writing and a swelling score. This movie used destiny as a plot device and was able to revive the grown-up romance drama. It's sentimental, yes, but it never tips into syrupy. Instead, it kind of taps into the deep universal belief that love, true love, may be out there somewhere, just waiting for you to come along and pick it up and put it in your mouth. Curtis Hanson would dive into the dark and glamorous rot of 1950s Hollywood in LA Confidential, a tangled noir web starring Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe, Kevin Spacey, and Kim Basinger, where every cop has secrets and every smile hides a gun. I've always enjoyed this movie. It's a crime saga that peels back the polished surface of 1950s Los Angeles, and specifically Hollywood and the surrounding areas, just revealing a city full of secrets and sleaze and very bad cops doing very bad things for very good reasons. Our 3 morally murky protagonists in this film are all excellent. You get Guy Pearce as the rulebook worshiper, then you get Russell Crowe as the brooding bruiser, and then you get Kevin Spacey as the slick celebrity cop. I think each do bring their own baggage to this case that involves murder and prostitution in this gossip rag called Hush Hush. I love Danny DeVito here. He narrates like a tabloid gremlin that you can't help but love. I really do think this movie has everything. You get shootouts in nightclubs, double crosses in diners. There's enough plot twists to make a pretzel look straight. It's a movie that's slick and smart and really just perfectly dressed. Kim Basinger in her Oscar-winning role just glides through this movie like a lost Lauren Bacall clone. She's equal parts icy and vulnerable and just fantastic in this character. And while you may need to take some notes on the plot, I think it's all wrapped in just razor sharp dialogue with smoky lighting and a score that makes you want to pour a bourbon and just stare off moodily into nothing. It's dark, it's deadly, and it's somehow cool as hell. LA Confidential didn't just flirt with greatness, it blackmailed it, it slapped it around, and then walked off with its plush fedora. Say his name 5 times and regret everything. Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose, starring Virginia Madsen and Tony Todd, mixes urban legend with supernatural terror in a haunting tale that slices much deeper than your average surface-level slasher. To me, this is easily one of the most haunting, poetic, and strangely seductive horror films from the 90s. Candyman wasn't just a slasher flick, it's like a gothic urban legend thriller just dipped in honey and blood with a hook-handed killer who quotes literature and floats like a ghostly philosopher of pain. Then you get Virginia Madsen, who's fantastic here, as well as Helen. She's this grad student researching urban myths in Chicago's Cabrini Green housing projects. Now, naturally, she's skeptical of the local legend about this vengeful spirit named Candyman, but that's until the bodies start dropping and mirrors start becoming portals to a very bad place. I love Tony Todd in this movie. He's really perfect for the role. He delivers Candyman with just an elegant menace. He's delivering Shakespearean monologues with a voice that could just melt through steel, all while being covered in bees like he's on an episode of Fear Factor. But I think what sets Candyman apart isn't just all the scares, it's really just the atmosphere overall. Philip Glass's eerie score just haunts every frame. The cinematography is dreamlike and hypnotic, and the themes, they hit hard. You get race, gentrification, the exploitation of trauma, and how legends are born and sustained. It's horror with a brain and a beating, bleeding heart. This was always one of my favorite horror movies growing up, hands down. It's always creeped me out more than most horror movies had at the time, and even to this day. And while 90s horror at the time was veering towards meta and teen-driven romps, Candyman was one that dared to be mature and mythic and uncomfortably real. It wasn't a hit on the level of a Freddy or a Jason movie, but I think Candyman did build a legacy all its own, and in my opinion, it's a movie that certainly does earn a permanent place in the Horror Hall of Fame. Robert Rodriguez brings the bullets, the blood, and the guitars to Desperado, a revenge rampage soaked in style with Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek, and Danny Trejo, where a mysterious mariachi turns a sleepy town into a blood-soaked south-of-the-border action symphony. To me, Desperado is the cinematic equivalent of a flaming tequila shot. It's loud, it's stylish, it's guaranteed to leave you slightly dizzy, and you'll definitely be ready for round two. Directed by a then rising Robert Rodriguez, this of course is the sequel to his $7,000 indie hit El Mariachi, but with a bigger budget, more characters, louder guns, and Banderas in full guitar slinging revenge mode. Think spaghetti western by way of MTV. The plot is a revenge tale as old as bullets. A mysterious mariachi played by Banderas rolls into a Mexican town looking to settle a score with a drug lord, and along the way he shreds on his guitar and shoots literally everybody that comes across his path. Salma Hayek shows up as the bookshop owner, who luckily for us gets mixed up in things as well, and I think this movie just has an atmosphere all its own. Rodriguez directs this with just finesse. He salsas with the camera. Gunfights explode into choreographed chaos. Slow motion standoffs are just soaked in cool, and every bar shootout feels like a flamenco of destruction. Steve Buscemi shows up to narrate. Cheech Marin pours some tequila, and Danny Trejo is just throwing knives like an angry chef on a Friday night. Desperado would really mark Rodriguez's arrival as the new prince of pulp in the genre, blending Tarantino-level violence with Latin flair and a DIY filmmaking ethos. It was slick and sexy and stylish at a time when action films were either going full grit or full goofy. More than just a shoot 'em up, though, I think Desperado is just a love letter to mythic heroes and mariachi music, and the idea that your guitar case could also hold an RPG. It's kind of cool without trying. It was dangerous with a wink, and an action gem that still rocks the screen all these years later. Rudy, starring Sean Astin, is the ultimate underdog story where one scrappy kid with no talent, no size, and no quit dares to suit up for Notre Dame and tackles our tear ducts in the process in one of the most memorable sports flicks of all time. Now, if you've ever been told that you're too small, too slow, or just not good enough, then Rudy is your cinematic rally cry. This underdog sports saga follows Daniel Rudy Rudiger, a real-life 5'0" dreamer who dared to take on this Fighting Irish football team armed with nothing but heart, grit, his jockstrap, and a stubborn refusal to quit. I think Sean Astin was fantastic in this movie. He kills this performance as Rudy with just a wide-eyed natural optimism and an unwavering determination that could melt a glacier. He's not a natural athlete. He doesn't have the grades, and his family treats Notre Dame like a church they'll never be allowed into. But Rudy grinds anyways, on the field, in the classroom, and through life's endless fumbles. And yes, you will cry. Don't fight it. The moment the team lays their jerseys on the desk, brutal. When Rudy finally takes the field, emotional destruction. When the crowd starts chanting, Rudy, Rudy, and Jerry Goldsmith's inspirational score swells, game over, dude. Get the Kleenex. I mean, even the coldest of sports fans will be wiping away tears with their foam fingers, because Rudy isn't just football. It's about perseverance, identity, and proving that dreams matter even when they're unlikely. It's a love letter to just long shots and late bloomers, and it doesn't pretend that there are shortcuts along the way. This film became a staple in locker rooms and classrooms across America. Personally, I've always been a scrappy believer, and I've always watched this movie growing up before every season of tryouts as a kid, whether it was basketball, football, or baseball. This isn't a flashy film, but that's the point. Neither was Rudy. In Three Kings, David O. Russell turns the Gulf War into a gritty gold heist with George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, and Ice Cube, where the bullets are real, the humor is dark, and everybody's just trying to survive long enough to split the loot. Three Kings is what happens when a heist movie, a war film, and a politically charged satire all collide in the middle of the desert, and somehow it works like a charm. Directed by David O. Russell before he went full awards bait, this 1999 gem is set during the tail end of the Gulf War and stars George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, and Ice Cube. They're U.S. soldiers who find a treasure map in the back pocket of a surrendering Iraqi. No, really, this is the Desert Storm version of One-Eyed Willie's Rich Stuff, and Wahlberg, Cube, and Clooney are the commando versions of the Goonies. Their goal to steal Saddam Hussein's hidden stash of gold. Their journey is a descent into the real human cost of war, and it's all wrapped in adrenaline, absurdity, and camera filters that look like they were dipped in motor oil. Clooney plays the world-weary major with a stylish grit. Wahlberg is the young soldier who learns lessons the hard way, and Ice Cube, carrying the quiet cool of someone who doesn't need to raise his voice, just wants to survive so he could say it was a good day. Yet it's Spike Jonze playing a lovable redneck with a malfunctioning moral compass that nearly steals the movie here. What starts as a post-war treasure hunt becomes a biting critique of American intervention, media manipulation, and military bureaucracy, and yet it never forgets to entertain. One minute you're watching a slick shootout, the next minute you're reeling from a gut punch of human drama. Tonally, it's a tightrope walk, and somehow Russell sticks to landing. It's sharp, smart, stylishly subversive. Not many movies make you laugh, think, and sweat in the same scene, but Three Kings is certainly one that does. Oliver Stone cranks the volume to a 12 in Any Given Sunday, a sweaty, snarling football epic starring Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx, Cameron Diaz, and LL Cool J, where every play is war, every locker room is chaos, and every monologue sounds like it came from a recruitment video. Now, Any Given Sunday is Oliver Stone's chaotic and emotionally jacked up Super Bowl of a movie. It's a gridiron epic that tackles football not as a game, but more so as a full contact war for legacy and money and ego and TV ratings. Directed with Stone's signature whiplash editing, turbocharged symbolism, this movie feels less like watching a football game and more like being hit by a linebacker when you're not looking. Yet, for some reason, it's always been one of my favorite football movies. You get Al Pacino as the old school coach of the fictional Miami Sharks. He's a man that's fighting for relevance in a sport that's quickly outpacing his principles. He's clashing with the ambitious new team owner, played by Cameron Diaz. He's babysitting an egomaniac quarterback in Dennis Quaid. And trying to wrangle in a wild card backup QB played with a breakout bravado by Jamie Foxx. Behold the origin of Steamin' Willie Beeman, a name you will never forget once it's sung to you in a locker room rap. I mean, this movie is just jammed with everything. It's got hard hits, it's got locker room meltdowns, eye-popping tackles, and more slow-mo than a shampoo commercial. Stone really uses every camera angle known to mankind, often in the same scene. It's gritty, it's loud, it's abrasive, and it's constantly at 150%. There's even a Lawrence Taylor cameo where he plays a dangerously concussed linebacker because subtlety was clearly benched for this movie. And of course, there's the speech. I mean, Pacino's inch by inch locker room monologue is the Rocky Balboa of pet talks. It's overwrought, inspirational, and unforgettable. And Any Given Sunday may not be a traditional football movie or a traditional sports movie, but it's a wild blend of sports and vanity and grit, and it's just a time capsule of Y2K era masculinity, corporate pressure, and on-field carnage. It's messy, it's ambitious, it's totally over the top, kind of like football itself. John Singleton throws college life into a pressure cooker with Higher Learning, a sharp and intense drama starring Omar Epps, Christy Swanson, Ice Cube, and Michael Rappaport, where race, identity, and ideology clash on a volatile campus that's anything but safe. Now, Higher Learning isn't your typical college movie. It's an intense, ambitious drama that drops you into fictional Columbia University and dares you to confront the tough stuff. Race, gender, identity, power, and violence, all swirling just beneath the surface of frat parties and freshman awkwardness. The cast here is just stacked with rising stars from the 90s. Omar Epps plays a talented but frustrated athlete. Christy Swanson plays a sheltered student discovering feminism, and Michael Rappaport plays a lonely, radicalized outsider whose arc takes a deeply unsettling turn. Then you get Lawrence Fishburne channeling equal parts Yoda and James Baldwin as a professor who drops knowledge in a Trinidadian accent that could stop traffic. Singleton isn't subtle here, but that's the point. I mean, this film is bold, it's raw, it's unflinching in its examination of systemic issues bubbling up in America, and especially on college campuses. Racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, white supremacy, it's all here. It hits hard. Some of it feels uncomfortably ahead of its time. Some of it does still sting because much haven't changed. And really, sure, some of it is messy in places. Tone admittedly does wobble a little bit. The symbolism, it can be heavy-handed, and the third act does go full Greek tragedy, but there's also power in that chaos. Singleton aimed high here, and even when the film fumbles, it stumbles with a purpose. Higher Learning may not be your typical 90s coming-of-age tale, but it's a movie that hit hard in the 90s and still lands plenty of punches today. If you want lighthearted school spirit, maybe try Legally Blonde, but if you want to leave campus with something to think about, I think Higher Learning is still a movie that's very much a class in session. And directed by Danny Boyle, Trainspotting dives headfirst into the lives of heroin addicts in Edinburgh with a punk rock pulse and a whole lot of attitudes. Ewan McGregor, Robert Carlyle, and Johnny Lee Miller headline this dark, electric, and strangely beautiful ride through addiction, nihilism, and toilet metaphors that you'll never unsee. Welcome to Edinburgh's underbelly, where the carpets are sticky, the toilets are legendary, and heroin addiction has never looked so kinetic. Danny Boyle's Trainspotting isn't just a drug movie, though. It's a cultural Molotov cocktail hurled directly into the face of British cinema in the 90s. It follows Renton, Spud, Sick Boy, and the terrifyingly unhinged Begbie as they bounce between highs, lows, scams, and eventual wake-up calls. This, however, is not the somber PSA-style addiction movie of yesteryear. Trainspotting is funny, it's fast, and weirdly charming before it just tears your heart out. I really think Boyle directs this movie with just a breakneck style. You get camera tricks, freeze frames, and surreal dives into toilets, and a soundtrack that's basically the mixtape of a generation. This movie made McGregor a star overnight, and it really did just kick open the doors for British indie cinema. It's anti establishment, it's angry, and yet it somehow balances squalor with style without ever flinching. Yet, Train Spotting doesn't glamorize anything. It shows the devastating cycles of addiction, the despair that clings even after the high fades, and the painful compromises of choosing survival over destruction, all without sacrificing narrative energy or just razor sharp wit. I think Train Spotting just became a counterculture classic, a fashion influence, and the movie your cool friend in college just insisted you watch. And honestly, they were right. Sylvester Stallone trades the Philly streets for snowy peaks and Cliffhanger, a high-altitude action thriller directed by Rennie Harlan, when a mountain rescue turns into a deadly game of cat and mouse with a crew of skyjacking thieves. It's all ropes, revenge, and one-liners, all above the clouds in a 90s movie that feels like it just came right out of the 80s. Now, if Die Hard ever climbed a mountain and wrestled with gravity, it would look a lot like Cliffhanger. This high-altitude action flick features Stallone as a traumatized mountain rescue ranger who will face off against John Lithgow's delightfully over-the-top British villain who may or may not have studied criminal psychology at Evil Henchman University, set in the snowy peaks of the Rockies, but shot mostly in the Italian Alps. Cliffhanger opens with one of the most traumatic rope-snapping sequences in 90s cinema that was parodied for years to come, and this really just properly sets the tone because this movie is not messing around with your fear of heights. After a botched midair heist gone wrong leads a group of criminals to losing millions of dollars in briefcases scattered across the mountains, Stallone is the reluctant hero, forced back into his harnesses and his gear and trauma to clean up the mess. Simply put, Cliffhanger is just pure action movie spectacle. It's got daring stunts, majestic mountain shots, and fight scenes on ledges narrower than a breadstick. Lithgow chews through his villain role like he's competing for the best 007 villain, and the supporting cast is great. It includes Michael Rooker yelling with purpose in almost every scene, and Janine Turner as the obligatory love interest slash pilot combo. Really released in an era of beefy action heroes, Cliffhanger thrived. It managed to cling to box office success thanks to its just commitment to practical effects and its sheer nerves. There's no CGI parachutes here, just real stuntmen dangling off cliffs and looking absolutely miserable doing it. I mean, is it realistic? Not remotely. Is it awesome? Absolutely. And if your hands didn't sweat at least once during this movie, then you might already be part mountain goat. Michael Bay's The Rock is a glorious, explosion-filled jailbreak flick in reverse, starring Sean Connery as a rogue SAS inmate and Nicolas Cage in full action movie mode at the time in Hollywood as a jittery chemist, and together they must team up to stop Ed Harris from unleashing bioweapons on San Francisco from inside Alcatraz with only the Bayhem to guide them. To me, The Rock is what happens when you give Michael Bay a Hollywood allowance, toss Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery into Alcatraz, and then add enough explosives to rattle the Golden Gate Bridge. The Rock is really the most 90s action movie that ever 90s action movied, and I do say that with love. This glorious patriotic powder keg has certainly become a cult classic, not just for its action, but for its memorable moments, its relentlessly quotable one-liners, and just its insane premise overall. Here, Cage plays this nervous FBI chemical weapons specialist who, despite having never fired a gun in his life, is suddenly sent on a hostage rescue mission. Why? Because terrorists led by Ed Harris have taken over Alcatraz with rockets filled with this lethal VX gas, and the only man who can help sneak Cage in is a former British spy who's been illegally imprisoned since the 60s, played by Sean Connery. basically playing James Bond if M16 had locked him up for decades and threw away the key. Now, as a movie, The Rock barely stops to breathe. It races through gunfights, car chases through San Francisco, secret underground tunnels, and moments where Cage has to literally stab himself in the heart with a giant syringe. Just a casual Wednesday, and my friends and I ate this movie up, and we watched it at the drive-in theater so many times during the summer of '96. I think Cage brings peak weirdo energy here. Connery somehow makes you believe he does know Alcatraz's every secret rat tunnel, and Ed Harris gives a real emotional just weight to a performance that could have otherwise just resulted in a cardboard villain. To me, The Rock is stylish, it's bombastic, and still quotable years later. And really in the pantheon of action movies, I do think The Rock remains as a monument to the genre's just absurd glory. Brian De Palma brings split screens and swirling conspiracies to Snake Eyes, a slick Atlantic City set thriller starring Nicolas Cage as this corrupt cop who stumbles into a political assassination at a boxing match with Gary Sinise and Carla Gugino tossed in, and a camera that never stops swirling in a mystery that spirals fast, flashy, and fun. Snake Eyes really is De Palma in full stylish madman mode. Long takes, swirling camera moves, and Nicolas Cage let completely off the leash as this corrupt Atlantic City cop with bad suits and worse ethics. This one opens up with a beautiful, seamless 13-minute single shot that tracks Cage through a boxing match, a political rally, and eventually through a very public assassination. This movie is part mystery, it's part fever dream, and all De Palma doing jazz hands behind the camera. It's set entirely inside a gaudy casino and just a boxing arena during a thunderstorm, because why not literally add some more atmosphere to this movie? Snake Eyes starts like a sports movie, it twists into a conspiracy thriller, and it ends up somewhere between Hitchcock and high camp. Cage thinks he's got it all figured out until he kind of stumbles into a mess involving missile defense systems, a mysterious woman in white, and his best friend, a Navy commander played by Gary Sinise, who may or may not be as clean-cut as his uniform. Overall, Snake Eyes is fun, it's flashy, it's ridiculous, it's kind of glorious. De Palma leans into his signature split screens and overhead angles and just endless amounts of theatrical tension, while Cage, decked out like an Eastern European gangster, acts like someone dared him to out-weird every scene, and he might have succeeded here. Though this movie did divide critics at the times, Snake Eyes is another movie that has gained a cult status for its bold direction and just its unhinged energy overall. It's not your typical action thriller, it's more like Rashomon if everybody was sweating and scheming and yelling inside a casino at 2 a.m. It may not solve all of its plot threads, but like a bet gone wrong, Snake Eyes is a spectacle that you can't look away from, even if the odds were never really in its favor. Ronin is a moody, cerebral action film directed by John Frankenheimer, where Robert De Niro and Jean Reno lead a team of international operatives chasing a mysterious briefcase through Europe with thrilling, realistic car chases and double crosses at every turn. It's just really spy thriller poetry in motion. In a sea of late 90s CGI-fueled chaos, I always thought Ronin was kind of a glorious throwback. It's a moody, grown-up spy thriller where trust is a myth, the car chases are real, and Robert De Niro has never looked more skeptical. A Ronin is named after a masterless samurai, and that's exactly what I think this crew of mercenaries feel like. World-weary warriors for hire, navigating a Europe filled with shadows and secrets. The setup is delightfully vague. We get a group of international operatives played by De Niro, Jean Reno, Stellan Skarsgård, and Sean Bean. They're hired to steal this mysterious briefcase. What's inside? Doesn't really matter. Who's hiring them? It is a good question. As the double crosses pile up, this briefcase really just turns into a MacGuffin, more slippery than Puff at a freak-off. And then there are the car chases, the magnificent car chases, some of the most pulse pounding sequences ever put to film, using real stunt drivers just tearing through the narrow streets of Paris and Nice. There's no green screen, no shortcuts, just steel, speed, and screaming tires. It's really cinematic horsepower in pure form. I think De Niro really does anchor Ronan with just a dry wit and the unflinching eyes of someone who's seen a lot and probably caused most of it. Jean Reno, I really like him in this one as well. He adds heart as De Niro's quiet ally, and Natasha McElhone really does keep you guessing as the icy liaison with maybe too many secrets. Now, Ronin didn't really explode at the box office, but I do think its legacy has grown. It's become, to me at least, a gold standard for smart action and sophisticated spy cinema. It's the kind of film that rewards rewatching, especially if you enjoy your intrigue laced with existentialism and your shootouts with a side of class. Paul Verhoeven's Basic Instinct is a steamy, stylish noir film where Michael Douglas plays a detective tangled up with a seductive and possibly homicidal author played up iconically by Sharon Stone. There's a murder in this one, sex, mind games, sex, and that interrogation scene, all wrapped in sultry San Francisco fog and sex. Now, Basic Instinct didn't just stir controversy. This erotic thriller made headlines around the world. It sparked debates and raked in hundreds of millions of dollars while redefining the term psychosexual mind game. This is part film noir, part fever dream, and all very, very provocative. Michael Douglas plays a low-key, unstable San Francisco detective who is still allowed to carry a badge and a gun despite a hefty list of behavioral red flags. He's investigating the ice pick murder of this rock star and is immediately entranced by the prime suspect, Catherine Trammell, played by Sharon Stone, in a role that just launched her into superstardom. Stone's a seductive, manipulative, razor-sharp mystery novelist who may or may not have used her own book as a blueprint for murder, and that's really the thrill. Everybody's guilty, no one's trustworthy, and of course, everyone's sleeping with one another. The interrogation scene alone became the stuff of a legend, and just instant parody and endless debate about what people did or didn't see. I think Verhoeven directs the hell out of this one with his signature mix of sleaze and satire, and behind all the steamy thrills, I think Basic Instinct is a slick, stylish crime story drenched in danger and moral ambiguity. Douglas, to his heart, tries his best to solve this case with his hormone howitzer, but it's Stone who easily walks away with this film, blending vulnerability and menace like a cinematic cocktail you probably shouldn't drink, but you more than likely will anyways. Basic Instinct is shameless, it's stylish, it's smarter than people give it credit for. It's also a masterclass in how to make the audience complicit. You'll question your morals, you'll question your detective instincts, and you may question the lack of acrobatics in your own love life. When New York City falls under martial law after a wave of terrorist attacks, Denzel Washington, Annette Bening, and Bruce Willis will have to navigate the moral minefield in Edward Zwick's The Siege. Equal parts thriller and political commentary, it feels eerily prescient in hindsight. To me, The Siege is one of those 90s thrillers that kind of hit like a prophecy. It imagined a scenario that many at the time considered unthinkable, a wave of terrorist attacks hitting New York City, leading to the military occupation of American soil. At the time, audiences didn't really quite know what to make of this movie, but it was completely gripping, and in hindsight, it plays like a chilling foreshadowing of post 9/11 America, complete with moral gray zones, panic politics, and here, Bruce Willis fully activated as a tough guy general. Denzel Washington stars in this one as an FBI agent with the voice of reason. He's caught between duty, civil liberties, and pure chaos. When bombs begin exploding across the city and panic takes over, martial law is declared. The U.S. Army rolls in, led by Willis, whose idea of containment involves curfews and tanks and rounding up entire communities. Annette Bening adds some intrigue to this as a shadowy CIA operative with secrets and personal stakes. She does a great job of kind of blurring the line between ally and liability. Zwick here doesn't shy away from the uncomfortable questions like who gets sacrificed in the name of national security, what happens when fear overrides freedom. While the movie didn't really receive universal praise on release, with some criticizing its dramatics and its implausibility, it has really aged like a political time capsule that somehow predicted a future it couldn't have known. Washington here is reliably excellent, grounding the film with conviction and weariness. Willis is great. He just plays this role with an icy calculation, and the action, though sparingly deployed, really lands hard when it hits. The siege is intense, it's urgent, and eerily ahead of its time. It's not always subtle, but it's never dull, and it wants you to feel uncomfortable, and in today's context, it absolutely succeeds. Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights chronicles the rise and fall of 70s porn star Dirk Diggler. Mark Wahlberg here leads a scene-stealing ensemble, including actors like Julianne Moore, Burt Reynolds, Don Cheadle, and Philip Seymour Hoffman in a fun, flashy, and tragic film that's as emotionally revealing as it is revealing. To me, Boogie Nights is like the cinematic equivalent of a mirror ball, glittering, spinning, colorful, and reflecting both the highs and the heartbreaks of the adult film industry during the 70s. This late 90s epic is somehow both a rise and fall story and a twisted and heartbreaking family drama. Think Goodfellas meets Behind the Green Door with the killer soundtrack, better lighting, and a little bit more chest hair. Here at the center of everything is Wahlberg as this sweet but dim busboy who becomes Dirk Diggler, an overnight adult film sensation thanks to his remarkable banana cannon. Julianne Moore plays the older, emotionally damaged but maternal porn star who takes him under her wing and to her bedroom, while Burt Reynolds gives a career-reviving performance as a director who still believes that adult films can be art. Here, Anderson assembles what I think is just a wild and wonderful ensemble cast. Philip Seymour Hoffman as a closeted boom mic operator with a crush, John C. Reilly as Dirk's dumb but lovable sidekick, Heather Graham as Roller Girl, and Don Cheadle trying to sell stereo equipment while he's dressed up like a rhinestone cowboy. Here, everybody really gets their moment. Boogie Nights really charts the adult film industry's shift from the glitzy, almost glamorous late 70s into the sad VHS-fueled 80s, and then things go dark fast. I remember watching this movie when I was like 19 years old and thinking, maybe I don't want to be a porn star when I grow up. But even at its bleakest moments, drug binges, botched robberies, Alfred Molina dancing to Sister Christian, Boogie Nights pulses with life, rhythm, and empathy. It's big, it's bold, it's oddly tender. It's a cautionary tale wrapped in gold lame, cocaine, and disco grooves. You'll laugh, you'll cringe, maybe cry, and you'll never hear Jesse's Girl the same way again. Ron Howard's Backdraft was one of the first event films I remember as a teenager. It ignites a high-emotion, brotherly firefighting saga starring Kurt Russell and William Baldwin and Robert De Niro as they battle blazes and a mysterious arsonist in Chicago with real flames and searing tension. It's a firehouse soap opera with blockbuster heat that just captured the hearts of the country during the summer of 1991. Backdraft is the kind of immersive movie that'll just make you smell smoke by watching it. This firefighting drama is equal parts sizzle and sibling rivalry, all wrapped in a thick coat of ash and soot, sweat, and Chicago grit. It's not just about fire, it's about fire as a character, one that growls and stalks and strikes with almost a supernatural precision. Here, Kurt Russell stars as the veteran firefighter. He's the kind of tough guy who charges into a burning building with more swagger than safety gear. William Baldwin plays his younger brother. He's a rookie trying to escape his big brother's shadow while still trying to figure out if he's even cut out for this inferno-filled life. Their dad, of course, died fighting a blaze when they were kids, so let's just say their family dinners have plenty of Bud Light and tension. Then we get Robert De Niro as a burnt-out arson investigator with a gravelly voice and an eye for fire's signature, and We also get Donald Sutherland as an unhinged firebug who speaks about flames like they're his lost love. You sprinkle in some political corruption, some firehouse drama, and some of the best practical fire effects ever put to screen, and Backdraft truly just ignites cinematically. Ron Howard doesn't just film fires here, he choreographs them. The explosions are real, the flames really dance. You feel the danger. This movie was just a smash hit. It earned Oscar nods. It made every 90s kid consider becoming a firefighter for about 5 minutes. This really was one of the first films I can remember the whole family gathering around to watch together. It certainly made that fire truck love scene more awkward than needed. But regardless, Backdraft is dramatic, it's explosive, it's proudly old school, and sure, it leans heavily into the melodrama, but when the walls are melting and the brothers are yelling at one another, you're way too locked in to even care. Harrison Ford runs for his life as the wrongly accused Dr. Richard Kimball in The Fugitive, with Tommy Lee Jones hot on his trail as the relentless U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard, directed by Andrew Davis. This is just a breathless manhunt that mixes sharp thrills with award-winning chase sequences and just world-class performances. To me, The Fugitive is one of those rare 90s thrillers that was able to take a very simple setup, an innocent man on the run, and elevate it to near perfection. This 1993 juggernaut follows a respected Chicago surgeon. He's been wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife, and after a spectacular prison bust train crash that's still visually jaw-dropping to watch all these years later, Kimball escapes and begins the ultimate game of cat and mouse. His mission, to find the real killer. Their mission, to find him before he does. Enter U.S. Marshal Sam Gerard, played perfectly by Tommy Lee Jones, in a performance that's just so commanding and dryly hilarious that it would win him an Oscar, and rightfully so, because he does steal every scene in this movie that he's in with his deadpan authority and his one-liners that somehow turn bureaucratic intensity into blockbuster gold. And overall, what I think makes The Fugitive work so well is just how seriously it takes its characters. Kimball isn't an action hero, he's just a normal guy trying to stay alive and using his smarts to do so. I think the tension comes nicely from the many close calls and the brainy sleuthing and the constant push-pull between predator and prey. And Gerard, while relentless, he's not the villain either. He's just good at his job. I think this movie mixes those characters with great practical stunts and sharp editing and a pace that never quits. Ford's all grit and worry. He's running through dams and spillways and impersonating janitors, and all through his intellect, he's really able to always keep a step ahead. This movie was just a massive hit when it was released. It was another of those movies like Backdraft that I remember the whole family gathering for. The Fugitive would be a film that would prove that intelligence, great casting, and taut direction could still very much blow up at the box office. It would also kick off a wave of wrong man on the run movies, none of which, though, would not come close to topping the heights that The Fugitive would reach. In The Bodyguard, Whitney Houston belts ballads, Kevin Costner broods around in a romantic thriller about a pop diva, her bullet-catching bodyguard, and a scarf that launched 1,000 slow-motion moments in cinema after. His mission was simple: to never let her out of his sight, to never let his guard down, and to never fall in love, and he was sadly only to get 2 out of the 3. This movie gives you Whitney Houston, Kevin Costner, and an adult romance with a 6th-grade structure that touches almost every genre there is. That's really all you need to know, but let's go deeper, because The Bodyguard is not just movie magic. It's one of my all-time favorite guilty pleasure flicks that I do force my wife to watch with me every year. It's an emotional roller coaster wearing a sequin dress and sunglasses at night. It's peak 90s melodrama wrapped in glittery pop ballads and gently dipped in slow-motion body checks of emotion. Kevin Costner plays the ex-Secret Service agent turned bodyguard with the charm of a piece of driftwood, and Houston, in her acting debut, is a pop diva who needs protection from a stalker, an inevitable Oscar snub, and the emotional weight of singing one of the most legendary ballads ever recorded, because Let's talk about that song. I Will Always Love You didn't just top charts, it obliterated them. The soundtrack became the best selling of all time, turning every high school dance and breakup into a dramatic slow motion montage. Critics, of course, weren't swooning back in 1992, calling it overly melodramatic and sappy, but audiences disagreed to the tune of over $400 million worldwide, and decades later, it still works, whether you're watching for the romance or the nostalgia or the absolutely bonkers moment where Kevin Costner shoots blind in the snow like a hitman whisperer. Rewatching this movie now is like uncorking a bottle of 90s vintage cheese. It's delicious, dramatic, and a little bit silly, but try not to tear up on that final song because it will sneak up on you. In the magnificently over-the-top Universal Soldier, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren star as reanimated super soldiers with PTSD, neck bombs, and unresolved Vietnam beef, and a gloriously unhinged sci-fi action showdown that is full throttle from start to finish. Now, what if you could bring soldiers back from the dead, inject them with mind control agents, and then program them to kick people through walls? It's pretty much the premise of Universal Soldier, a movie that answers the question, what if Frankenstein was actually Belgian with a spin kick and a six-pack? Here, Van Damme is a sweet Louisiana boy turned genetically modified military cyborg who just wants to find some pants and remember how to feel things again. Opposite him is Dolph Lundgren, the world's angriest necklace enthusiast who's all ears and who clearly missed the memo about post-war therapy. Universal Soldier is just a mashup movie. It tosses together Vietnam trauma, cryogenetics, truck stop shootouts, and enough roundhouse kicks to rotate the planet. It adds ice baths, neck injections, and a lot of aggressive shouting from men wearing tight shirts and even tighter expressions. I think Emmerich directs this with the subtlety of a bazooka, and frankly, it's exactly what this movie deserved. Critics, of course, gave it a shrug, but audiences turned it into a cult hit. It launched a franchise that refused to die, including a sequel, direct-to-video sequels, a couple of soft reboots, and one oddly poetic 2012 entry that kind of felt like Tarkovsky on steroids. This was always a favorite of mine growing up. I had a copy of it on VHS and watched it religiously, and to me, Universal Soldier doesn't just embrace its own insanity. I think it went full swan dive into a vat of bio goo and came out flexing. It's absurd, aggressive, and secretly kind of brilliant if you're into existential dread delivered via grenade launcher. Plus, where else can you see Lundgren terrorize shoppers in a supermarket while wearing an ear necklace? Demolition Man is a beautifully over-the-top sci-fi action romp where Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes will throw down in a time where swearing is illegal, Taco Bell runs the world, and the seashells are mysterious, and luckily for all of us, the future isn't big enough for the both of them. Now, Demolition Man is what happens when you throw Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and a truckload of 80s action tropes into a blender and spin it into the 90s. This is a movie that says, what if Brave New World was filled with vanity muscles, one-liners, and heavy artillery? The peaceful, over-sanitized setting here is ripe for destruction, and who better than Stallone's grunting relic of the past to punch it into shape? Demolition Man to me is Stallone doing what he does best, bumbling heroism and flexing through destruction. Wesley Snipes, meanwhile, is having the time of his life. He is the star of this movie, gleefully chewing scenery like it's the only thing not banned in the future. These were my 1 and 2 favorite actors at the time, and them together on screen really was a cinematic Super Bowl for teenage Anthony. Sandra Bullock, I thought, was great here as well, playing that eager officer, just obsessed with 20th century culture, which leads to many hilarious misunderstandings and really one of cinema's weirdest virtual sex scenes. To me, Demolition Man is just an action amusement park, and it's a total blast. It's packed with satire and shootouts and seashells nobody knows how to use. This is a movie that delivers its action with a wink. It skewers political correctness and corporatization and our obsessions with safety, and somehow predicted things like smart homes and smartphones and contactless everything, and Arnold Schwarzenegger becoming a political figure. It's part sci fi, part buddy comedy, and part muscle bound mayhem, all wrapped in spandex and foam padding. So, in other words, it's a glorious, absurd time capsule of 90s action cinema with just enough brain behind the brawn. In The Usual Suspects, Kevin Spacey, Gabriel Byrne, and Benicio del Toro headline a great ensemble cast and a twisty crime tale about five crooks, one legendary boogeyman, and a coffee cup that changed movie endings forever and proved that the truth is always the last place you look. Prior to the era of true crime podcasts, Reddit threads, and TikToks decoding film endings frame by frame, there was The Usual Suspects, a noir-inspired thriller that whispered, "Nothing is what it seems," and then pulled the rug so hard it knocked over half of the 90s. The plot? Well, it's kind of everything and kind of nothing. Five criminals walk into a police lineup. It sounds like the setup for a joke, but instead it kicks off a twisty story told by mostly one guy, Verbal Kent, played by Kevin Spacey, and a performance that won him an Oscar and created 1,000 conspiracy theories. The story he spins is part heist, part revenge tale involving a crime lord named Kaiser Sose, who may be a myth or may be your neighbor. The film's iconic ending, where everything just snaps into place like an evil origami swan, just cemented its status as one of the greatest cinematic gotchas of all time. Audiences were floored, film students took notes, people were spent years rewatching it to just spot clues that they'd missed, and for about a decade, no twist was safe from being compared to it. I remember seeing this movie just after high school, and it was one of the first that inspired me to start writing. It was also staple viewing for me in college. This movie taught us to question everything, especially the stories that seemed too perfect. It also taught us to never trust a guy with a limp and a cup of coffee. The greatest trick The Usual Suspects ever pulled was making audiences feel smart and stupid at the same time and having them loving every second of it. In Tarantino's first full feature, Reservoir Dogs, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, and Steve Buscemi wear black suits, spill blood, and argue about tipping in an ultra-cool story about a heist gone sideways, and then some in a movie where every dog has his day. Before Quentin Tarantino had an Oscar, a foot fetish meme empire, and a license to kill Nazis, he unleashed Reservoir Dogs, a blood-splattered calling card that made indie cinema cool and turned colored criminals Mr. Pink, Mr. White, and Mr. I definitely need some therapy into legends. This is the heist movie where the heist never happens on screen. Instead, we get the chaotic aftermath of it. A warehouse full of bleeding men, yelling, accusing, and bleeding some more. Harvey Keitel brings a stoic gravitas as Mr. White, Tim Roth plays the world's sweatiest undercover cop, and Steve Buscemi somehow makes being paranoid weirdly charming as Mr. Pink, but there's no doubt it's Michael Madsen as Mr. Blonde who steals and slices the show. That ear scene traumatized a generation, and with its non-linear structure and machine gun dialogue and just a soundtrack full of sunny 70s hits laid over this pure carnage, Reservoir Dogs flipped the crime genre on its bleeding ear. It proved that you didn't need a blockbuster budget to tell a stylish, punchy story. You just needed some snappy banter, sudden violence, and an unshakable love of cinematic cool. Reservoir Dogs was not a movie that set box office records, but it did detonate across film culture like a stolen diamond exploding in a screenplay workshop. It made Tarantino a legend overnight. It would inspire a million imitators, and it turned every film student into a faux expert on non-linear storytelling and Madonna lyrics. It's not a movie that's for the squeamish, but it's one of the defining indie films of the 90s. It's brash, bloody, and endlessly quoted. Just don't ask Mr. Pink to tip, ever. In the In The Big Lebowski, Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, and Julianne Moore stumble through a surreal noir caper from the mind of the Coen brothers, full of rugs, bowling, and nihilists in a cult comedy that really ties the room together. The Dude abides, and so does The Big Lebowski, a film that bombed at the box office before achieving the rarest kind of cinematic glory. It became a religion. No, really, there's a real-life Church of the Latter-day Dude. That's the power of White Russians, rug metaphors, and peak Coen brothers absurdism. Here, Jeff Bridges gives the slacker performance of a lifetime as the Dude, a bathrobe-wearing bowler who gets mistaken for a millionaire, his rug gets peed on, and he gets pulled into a kidnapping scheme involving a purple-clad bowling Jesus and Tara Reid. The plot is much less important than the vibe, and the vibe here is pure stoned existentialism filtered through Raymond Chandler and weed smoke. I remember starting this movie just before a college party one night and never making it to the party because I was all in on this brilliant mess. Of course, critics were initially baffled by it. Audiences didn't quite know what to make of it either, but over time, The Big Lebowski became a touchstone for weird comedy, deadpan chaos, and ultimate quotability. It's basically a meme generator in movie form, and the Coen brothers craft a world so unique and so lovingly bizarre that fans have been quoting, analyzing, and cosplaying it for decades. The film doesn't solve any mysteries, but it doesn't need to. Like the Dude himself, it just floats along. Frances McDormand, William H. Macy, and Steve Buscemi bring Midwestern crime and Minnesota pleasantries to a whole new level in Fargo, a snow-drenched tale of kidnapping, murder, and polite police work in a homespun murder story once again from the minds of the Coen brothers. To me, Fargo is a snow-drenched slice of Midwestern mayhem that starts with a car deal gone wrong and ends up in the wood chipper. This darkly comedic masterpiece takes us to Minnesota, where politeness masks desperation and a kidnapping scheme unravels faster than a swap meet cardigan. William H. Macy plays this Weasley car salesman so deep in financial trouble he hires two lowlifes, Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare, to kidnap his own wife for ransom. His logic here? To get the money from his rich father and pay off his debts. I mean, what could go wrong, right? It turns out everything, because enter the very pregnant and very perceptive police chief played by Frances McDormand in a career-defining Oscar-winning performance. Her you betcha charm here and razor-sharp instincts are just perfect for this story. She disarms suspects with coffee and niceties before quietly and constructively dismantling their alibis. I mean, she is the unlikely hero here in a world filled with greed and stupidity and blood on the snow. I mean, Fargo is just one of those films that walks a tonal tightrope. It's equal parts gruesome and goofy, the violent shocks, but the accents soothe, the cinematography turns frozen landscapes into just beautiful canvases, and Carter Burwell's haunting score reminds you that beneath all the quirky charm is real chilling despair here. Now, culturally, Fargo has become a touchstone. It's been referenced, parodied, and even spun into a brilliant TV series. It showed that a crime doesn't pay, especially when you can't even execute a plan without screwing up the parking. In Bad Lieutenant, Harvey Keitel bears it all emotionally and literally as a corrupt cop on a drug-fueled collision course with redemption in Abel Ferrara's raw and gritty New York set character spiral about a gambler, a thief, a junkie, and a killer, and a cop, all in one. Not to be confused with the 2009 semi-remake Protocol New Orleans, that one starring Nicolas Cage and his hallucinatory iguana. This is the original, and it hits like a moral sledgehammer wrapped in cigarette smoke. Bad Lieutenant is less crime drama and more just a descent straight into the soul's grease trap. Keitel delivers one of the most raw and fearless performances ever put to screen, in my opinion. This is a movie that never flinches and doesn't care if you do. He plays this unnamed New York cop whose moral compass isn't broken. It was never installed. He's snorting coke at crime scenes, gambling away his life, shaking down criminals, and just spiraling towards spiritual oblivion. So, this is not a film for the faint of heart. It's a sweaty, grimy, film that's just crawling with urban decay. It's filmed in a New York City that actively looks like it's rejecting humanity. It will pull you in. I think here, Keitel just really strips himself bare to deliver a character that's all pain. This isn't a man that has hit rock bottom. This is a man that's already at rock bottom, and the rocks underneath him are starting to give out. Director Abel Ferreira does a fantastic job with this movie. He balances Catholic guilt, drug-fueled hallucinations, and the wreckage of masculine ego, like a man tossing lit matches into a confession booth soaked in gasoline. This film is brutally honest, often uncomfortable, and almost hypnotic in its misery. I remember watching this movie on cable when I was in my teens, but it really grabbed me later in college. Culturally, Bad Lieutenant became a cult legend, a raw nerve of early 90s indie cinema. It's the kind of movie you respect more than you enjoy, and one that asks tough, unanswerable questions about sin, grace, and whether a man has gone too far and can ever find his way back. It's not for everybody, but if you can handle the fall, it's unforgettable. In Spike Lee's He Got Game, Denzel Washington and NBA star Ray Allen bring father and son tension to the hardwood in a sports drama about guilt, glory, and all the politics of college recruiting, in a movie that's all about the father, the son, and the holy game. Now, He Got Game isn't just a sports movie, it's a Spike Lee joint laced with soul, sweat, and Shakespearean father-son drama. Denzel Washington brings gravitas and a pristine goatee as Jake Shuttlesworth, a prison inmate granted temporary release. His mission, to convince his estranged son Jesus, who's a top high school basketball prospect, to commit to the governor's alma mater. Simple favor, right? Only problem is Jake's been MIA for years and also accidentally killed Jesus' mother, so Father of the Year he is not. Yet still here, Spike Lee spins this high-stakes recruiting saga into something far richer. It's a story about freedom and forgiveness and family, and how being a top recruit in a sport can sometimes be a way out, but also a trap. I think Ray Allen in his acting debut certainly didn't have the dramatic range of Denzel, but he holds his own, especially in the scenes that require more silent intensity than soliloquy. And yes, the name Jesus Shuttlesworth went straight into the Cultural Hall of Fame. The film's pop culture impact, I think it would be substantial. I think Public Enemy's electric score thunders beneath the drama like a heartbeat. That surreal one-on-one showdown between father and son, instantly iconic, and Lee's camera glides through Coney Island like a basketball fever dream, capturing both the promise and the peril of sports celebrity. It's a little bit messy, it's a little bit poignant, and it's occasionally heavy-handed, but that's Spike Lee's lane, and he drives it well. Christian Slater goes full rebel with a cause and pump up the volume as a shy teen by day and a pirate radio DJ by night, who through his show stirs up teenage angst and FCC headaches in a movie that became a Gen X anthem. Before podcasts, YouTube rants, and TikTok monologues, there was Pump Up the Volume, a teen rebellion anthem hidden inside a pirate radio signal. Slater here stars as the painfully shy high schooler who moonlights as the fast-talking, truth-bomb-dropping radio renegade who, with just a mic, a modulator, and an impressive record collection, becomes the voice of disaffected youth in suburban Arizona. So, think Dead Poets Society meets Airheads if Mr. Keating had a mohawk and much better taste in music. Here, Slater, he's in full peak 90s angst mode. He gives a surprisingly grounded performance as both the quiet, mumbly loner and the smooth-talking alter ego Hard Harry. I think his rants are able to hit that sweet spot between melodramatic and prophetic. This movie really taps the raw nerves of adolescence with censorship and alienation and that quiet rage of being unheard. And this film's counterculture streak, complete with FCC raids and public radio takedowns now feels delightfully quaint, considering like a walkie-talkie rebellion against a world run by boomers. And the soundtrack, it's the chef's kiss, of course. Cowboy Junkies, Pixies, Soundgarden, Concrete Blonde, and it's the mixtape that your friend's older brother would bump when showing up in his iRock Z for a Sunday dinner. And Pump Up the Volume didn't just resonate, I think it sparked a generation of bedroom broadcasters and socially conscious screamers. It's a love letter to the lonely kids who figured out how to make noise and in doing so, found out how to make a difference. So yeah, talk hard, steal the air, and never underestimate the power of a teen with a microphone and a grudge. Natural Born Killers claimed that the media made them superstars as Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis go full psychopathic sweethearts in Oliver Stone's hallucinogenic crime spree where murder becomes media spectacle and love means never having to say you're sorry unless it's on live television. Now, some films take you on a journey. Natural Born Killers grabs you by the throat and shoves you into a psychedelic meat grinder. Directed by Oliver Stone with an original story from Quentin Tarantino, Natural Born Killers was a media critique shot out of a cannon. Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis play Mickey and Mallory. They're America's most charmingly unhinged couple who leave a trail of corpses and fanboys in their wake, all the while the press is eating it up like it's Super Bowl Sunday. Harrelson, previously known for being the lovable goof on Cheers, leans all the way into the crazy in this performance, while Lewis radiates equal parts menace and mall goth energy. It's as if Bonnie and Clyde had a baby with Beavis and Butthead, and that baby did mushrooms and watched cable news 24/7. Stone directs this one like he's possessed by three different music video directors all at the same time. He's switching film stocks and angles and editing styles with zero warning, and that's kind of the point. When it came out, the movie was both a lightning rod and a cult classic in waiting. Critics argued over whether it was a brilliant commentary or just really good at glamorizing violence. Either way, it helped ignite a decade of just increasingly meta media critiques from Fight Club to American Psycho. Natural Born Killers didn't just blur the line between infamy and fame, it chopped it into bits and aired it on primetime, and for better or worse, we've never turned our TVs off since. Jean-Claude Van Damme kicks his way through the space-time continuum in Peter Hyam's sci-fi action or Time Cop as he polices time travel with high kicks, a high mullet, tight pants, and zero tolerance for time-traveling Wall Street bros. They killed his wife 10 years ago, but there's still time to save her. In the golden age of action sci-fi mullets and split kicks, Time Cop stands proudly as Van Damme's most successful box office outing, proving once and for all that if you give JCVD a time machine and a tragic backstory, that he will absolutely do the splits across your kitchen counter and prevent temporal crime. Time Cop isn't so much a meditation on time travel as much as it is a vehicle for kicking guys into the past and watching them explode. Van Damme here plays this still grieving time enforcement agent. His job is basically to stop other time travelers from messing with history, and he does so using his charming quips and his swift kicks. It's like Looper if Looper had more hair gel and slow motion roundhouse kicks. This movie is filled with so much early 90s techno-noir moodiness that you can practically smell it. The year of its release, we watched this movie all summer at the Second Run Theater and couldn't get enough of it. Ron Silver's a great villain. He's chewing scenery perfectly as the evil senator, future crime lord who thinks money is more important than the space-time continuum. And because it's 1994, there's going to be a subplot involving a dead wife for motivation, which also provides some steamy flashbacks for some tasteful, gratuitous nudity, yet for all its dated tech and sci-fi logic gaps wide enough to drive a DeLorean through, Time Cop was a hit. It even got a TV series, a direct-to-video sequel, and it proved Van Damme could handle dramatic stakes and time paradox, all while maintaining perfect hair and a timeline full of just forgotten action flicks. I think Time Cop remains gloriously stuck in its own moment, proof that sometimes you can go back as long as you're kicking someone through the wormhole before you. Player was a movie that claimed everything you've heard is true, as Tim Robbins plays a slick studio exec dodging death threats, guilt, and bad pitches, and Robert Altman's razor-sharp Hollywood satire where the only thing more dangerous than murder is a box office bomb. Now, if Hollywood had a rear-view mirror, The Player would be the thing it pretends not to see. Directed by Robert Altman with a wink and a knife, this razor-sharp satire just skewers the film industry like it's sushi on a studio lot. Tim Robbins stars as a movie executive who greenlights mediocrity for a living. He dodges highbrow screenwriters and oh yeah, he accidentally murders a guy and then keeps on networking like nothing happened. So basically, it's another day in Los Angeles. This was a movie that I watched many times in college while in writing class. I loved the structure of it. I loved the sharp wit and how effortlessly it crafted the tension. Altman really does turn the camera on Tinseltown here and finds just a snake pit filled with power lunches, empty buzzwords, and executives so afraid of originality they'd rather commit suicide or a homicide than read a script that didn't have Julia Roberts or a happy ending. I think Robbins here is great. This is one of my favorite performances from him. He's just perfectly fit as this morally slippery suit whose biggest concern is whether Bruce Willis will still test well after a murder scene. This film famously opens with just a dazzling several-minute tracking shot that name drops everything from Touch of Evil to Ghost. It's so self-referential you'd think the movie might fold in on itself like a script caught in development hell, but instead it dances on the edge of cynicism with such charm it practically dares you to feel bad for this weasel of a protagonist. The Player was a critical darling and an insider's delight, setting the tone for 90s meta movies and self-aware storytelling. It really did walk, so adaptation and Entourage and every award season satire could jog behind it in envy. From cameos to the Hollywood name dropping and the pitch meeting from hell, The Player is that rare film that roasted the system while playing the game and won. Swingers brought us Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn cruising the neon-lit streets of LA, and Doug Liman's indie bromance about friends chasing gigs, heartbreak, and swing dancing redemption because, baby, you're so money and you don't even know it. Before Jon Favreau was making Disney and Marvel movies and Vince Vaughn was crashing weddings, they were just two broke actors with a camcorder, a dream, and an unhealthy obsession with swing music. Swingers is the quintessential 90s indie bromance, equal parts heartbreak, hilarity, and hipster smooth talk. It's set in a vibrant Los Angeles just as ska and swing music were somehow making a brief cultural comeback. Swingers follows Favreau as an emotionally wrecked comedian who just can't stop talking about his ex, and his friend Vaughn, the human embodiment of a shot of Jagger. He's the cool, fast-talking guy who's overly confident and just unhinged enough, and together they bar hop through heartbreak, clumsy dance moves, and endless "you're so money" affirmations that just became a mantra for a generation of overconfident underachievers, one of them being myself at the time as a senior in high school that just felt, I don't know, oddly inspired by this movie. Swingers was made on a shoestring budget, but it's loaded with quotable dialogue and sharp chemistry and a painfully relatable just look at post-breakup insecurity. It just felt like an inside joke amongst friends, and it's probably because that's kind of what it was, and audiences loved it for exactly that reason. It didn't need a huge plot, just a few good suits, some Rat Pack swagger, and a couple of guys trying and mostly failing to get their groove back. I mean, pop culture, it certainly took notice because overnight, Vegas baby became a catchphrase, lounge revival saw a spike, and every aspiring screenwriter started typing with Jon Favreau's voice in their head. Swingers wasn't just money, it was an indie flick that proved all you needed was a voice, a vibe, and a wingman who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Houston, we have a problem. Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and Bill Paxton launch into space for Apollo 13, Ron Howard's tense true-life tale of NASA's most famous malfunction, a 4-quadrant blockbuster that captured audiences worldwide in the summer of 1995. Here, Ron Howard took one of NASA's most famous near disasters and somehow turned it into one of the most riveting cinematic experiences of the 90s without needing to blow up an asteroid or invent space pirates. With Hanks in the captain's seat and Bacon and Paxton up in orbit, this movie strapped audiences into a space capsule and took them on a ride. By now, Houston, we have a problem is so iconic it might as well be printed on every printer error message, but in 1995 it landed like a punch to the chest, delivered by Hanks with the calm of a man who's both in mortal danger and just knows how to handle it because he's Tom Hanks. Now, this was just one of those movies that entire families would gather at the multiplex to go see, mine being one of them. We all loved it. There's no villain here, no alien threat, just oxygen tanks exploding and just the terrifying fragility of being like 200,000 miles from home in a glorified soda can. Ed Harris, forever in his white vest, just gives the most intense headset performance ever recorded, and Apollo 13 doesn't embellish. It respects the real events right down to the NASA level nerdy details, and somehow that makes it all the more thrilling. Apollo 13 wasn't just a box office hit, it was an awards darling, an engineering recruitment poster. It made space cool again without needing a single lightsaber, and it gave Hanks another notch on his all-American everyman utility belt. And to me, in a decade full of spectacle, Apollo 13 reminded us that the truth can sometimes be just as cinematic. In the Line of Fire delivered Clint Eastwood's aging Secret Service agent who plays a deadly game of cat and mouse with John Malkovich's whispery assassin and Wolfgang Petersen's taut political thriller because protecting the president never gets old, even if he is. By 1993, Clint Eastwood had pretty much played every grizzled hero imaginable: cowboys, cops, pilots, detectives, endless curmudgeons, but in the Line of Fire is where he would add washed-up Secret Service agent to the resume and somehow still managed to make it feel brand new. Petersen directs this movie with a kind of glossy 90s tension that just makes everything feel like it's a ticking clock. I think this movie gave Eastwood easily his juiciest cat and mouse game in years, opposite none other than a fantastic John Malkovich who's whispering threats like a deranged ASMR YouTuber. Eastwood plays this Secret Service agent haunted by the one time he failed to take a bullet for JFK, no less. So now older, grumpier, and perpetually squinting, he's determined to not let history repeat itself when Malkovich arrives on the scene. He's equal parts sadistic and suave. He starts taunting Eastwood with plans of assassinating the current president. So it's kind of like Dirty Harry went corporate. This movie serves up a Cold War paranoia as well as splashes of modern thriller sleekness, and it has a surprising amount of charm to it as well. And I think that's really thanks to Eastwood's unlikely subplot with Rene Russo, which somehow works even though Clint is roughly the age of the Lincoln Memorial, and despite also being young at the time, maybe 15 or 16 when I caught this movie on cable, like it really did pull me in, even though I didn't really understand all the complexities of it. I would always look for it later and always sit down and watch it and pull something new from it. Malkovich is great. He turns in one of the most gloriously creepy performances of the decade, crafting a villain who's smart, he's calm and capable. In the Line of Fire was a commercial hit. It proved that Eastwood could still headline an action thriller without needing to dodge bullets. He could do so with simple threats, phone calls, and thoughts of his own retirement. It's a film about redemption, legacy, and never underestimating a guy with a badge, a grudge, and a very dramatic telephone voice. Richard Linklater takes us back to 1976 and Dazed and Confused, with a cast featuring future stars such as Matthew McConaughey and Ben Affleck, where the last day of school means cruising, hazing, and deep philosophical musings like, all right, all right, all right. To me, Dazed and Confused is less of a movie and much more of a mood. It's the cinematic equivalent of the smell of spilt beer and cherry Slurpee wafting through the summer air of 1976. It's set over the course of one hazy night. This is the ultimate hangout movie where nothing happens, yet somehow everything happens. If high school was ever boring, weird, exciting, painful, or hilarious, or all of the above, this movie gets it. It's got a young, still innocent Ben Affleck with a paddle, and of course, Matthew McConaughey's birth of a catchphrase performance as Wooderson, the sleazy older guy who stuck around high school just long enough to become a legend. All right, all right, all right. It wasn't just a line, it was a lifestyle, one that McConaughey is still kind of riding like a 70s Chevelle through a Sonic drive-in. I think Linklater's genius here in the direction is just by letting the characters breathe. There's no plot checklist, no big climax, just a perfectly observed swirl of keggers, philosophical stoners, bleacher flirting, and awkward teenage power plays. The camera just kind of floats from click to click like a curious party guest, kind of eavesdropping on the micro dramas of growing up. And over the time, this film's impact has really only grown. It was a bomb at the box office, but on home video and cable, it certainly did find its people. It's now a pop culture touchstone, a rite of passage, and just a stylish blueprint for every One Crazy Night movie that would follow. Dazed and Confused didn't just capture the 70s, it nailed that universal feeling of being 17 years old, stuck between a bong hit and a future you can't see. It's slow, it's meandering, it's full of soul, and just kind of cool as hell. Tombstone proclaimed justice was coming. Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp. Val Kilmer steals the show as Doc Holliday. And George P. Cosmatos delivers an operatic western where the mustaches are thick, the one-liners are deadly, and vengeance always rides into town on horseback. Now, admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of westerns, but Tombstone does hit different. Once it gets going and starts, it does not stop until every mustache has been twitched, every outlaw has been shot, and every line has been etched into the granite of quotable movie history. George P. Cosmatos stunt directed this one for Kurt Russell, who really delivers a western so operatic and so quotable and so testosterone-drenched, it feels like the OK Corral being sponsored by Marlboro and shot in Super Scope. Russell delivers one of his most iconic roles, growling and strutting endlessly as Wyatt Earp, a lawman, family man, mustache model. He brings law and order to a town overrun by maniacs called the Cowboys. But let's be honest, this movie belongs to Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. He's drunk, he's dying, and downright Shakespearean. The cast around them is just stacked like a saloon poker table. Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton as Earp brothers, Powers Booth and Michael Bain as villainous scowl machines, and a soundtrack that practically is able to walk into the room before the characters do. Now, Tombstone wasn't the only Earp movie in the 90s. Costner's 3-hour opus rode in a year later as well, but to me, this one is the clear winner. It's faster, it's way more fun. It became almost an immediate cult classic and remains that go-to Western for people who only kind of like Westerns but really love one-liners, flashy gunfights, and slow motion. It's a cross between True Grit and Young Guns, a rare modern Western that doesn't just respect the mythos, it lets it rip with a 6-shooter in each hand with a bloody grin on its face. Neve Campbell leads a cast of 90s teens with way too much meta-knowledge in Wes Craven's slasher revival Scream, where the killer loves horror movies almost as much as murder. Don't answer the phone, don't open the door, and don't try to escape the imprint this movie left on 90s cinema. By 1996, slasher films were on life support until Scream came along with its black cloak, a voice changer, and a terrifying new rulebook to change the game. Scream didn't just revive the genre, it dissected it, mocked it, then made it frighteningly fun again, with Neve Campbell as the vulnerable yet resilient final girl Sidney Prescott, and just a cast of 90s TV royalty: Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard. It was like watching the TRL lineup just getting brutally and stylishly murdered, and yet it was also kind of hilarious along the way. The characters knew the horror movie rules: don't have sex, don't say I'll be right back, never trust the boyfriend, and yet they still got picked off one by one like a blockbuster rental checklist. Ghostface wasn't just a masked killer, but instead a pop culture icon, as likely to quote Halloween as he was to gut you. This movie kind of played like a mixtape of slasher history, with Craven cleverly remixing his own legacy. I mean, who else would kill off Drew Barrymore in the first 10 minutes and somehow make it more fun in doing so? I mean, impact was seismic. Scream made horror cool again. It spawned sequels, knockoffs, spoofs, and a generation of genre fans who learned to never answer the phone without checking the caller ID first. It was bloody, witty, self-aware, and still genuinely scary as well. This movie came out my senior year. We all watched it so many times at each other's houses. It was really more than a revival. Scream just became that blueprint for modern horror, with meta logic, killer twists, and an attitude that said, yes, we know what you did last summer, we're going to make fun of it and then stab it in the face. In The Last Boy Scout, Bruce Willis grumbles, Damon Wayans quips, and Tony Scott stylizes everything in sight in a gritty buddy cop actioner with football, foul mouths, and more one-liners than a Schwarzenegger highlight reel. Now, if you ever wondered what would happen if Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans teamed up to chew bubblegum, shoot bad guys, and exchange the snarkiest one-liners this side of the 90s, The Last Boy Scout has your answer, except they forgot the bubblegum. Directed by Tony Scott at the peak of his hyper-stylized, neon-lit action phase, this movie is like Die Hard meets Friday Night Lights with a mouthful of sarcasm and a whole lot of attitude. Willis plays this down-and-out private investigator that's got a mouth sharper than his gun, and Damon Wayans is a disgraced former football star with a chip on his shoulder the size of a linebacker, and together they're going to dive headfirst into a conspiracy involving crooked politicians and shady sports agents and enough dirty money to make Wall Street blush. This is a cocktail of sports and action and comedy with more plot twists that you can throw a football through. The tagline of this movie is "the goal is to survive," and it's not just a slogan, it's a spoiler warning, because in this movie things explode, punches fly, dialogue zings with the kind of wisecracking energy only a Willis-Wayans combo could deliver without ever missing a beat, because this movie does thrive on their awkward, intense energy with each other, and with Tony Scott's signature fast cuts and vibrant colors, it just makes everything feel like a live wire. And sure, The Last Boy Scout didn't reinvent the wheel, but it did polish it up with more than enough grit and humor to make it spin fast and roll straight. This is a 90s action gem that's rough around the edges, unapologetically loud, and somehow still manages to have a little bit of heart underneath all the chaos. In 1990's Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts would light up Rodeo Drive, starring as a charming escort who captures the heart of an uptight millionaire played by Richard Gere in a fairy tale meets rom-com story that turned shopping montages and bathtub sing-alongs into cultural landmarks. Now, when Pretty Woman was released, it wasn't just a rom-com. This was pretty much a cultural earthquake. This movie was everywhere. Julia Roberts, in the role that launched her into America's sweetheart stratosphere, played this Hollywood hooker with a heart of gold and a wardrobe to match, and Paired with Richard Gere's stoic millionaire, the movie effectively sold a fantasy just as glossy as the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. It took the age-old Cinderella tale, it sprinkled it with 90s sass, gave it a collection of iconic moments, and audiences loved it. Critics mostly approved as well, and the box office just went wild. It made $460 million plus globally, and it turned Roy Orbison's title track into a karaoke staple for generations of tipsy romantics. Robert's bubble bath scene, legendary. The opera date, it's imprinted in rom-com DNA forever, and who can forget the retail revenge line? It really did become the battle cry for underdogs everywhere. And despite not being a big rom-com guy, I admittedly love the atmosphere and the sappiness this movie delivers. Sure, its fairy tale gloss did draw some criticism over its simplistic portrayal of sex work and class dynamics, but that's just overthinking it. Even the skeptics couldn't deny this movie's charm. Julia Roberts' megawatt smile powered the whole enterprise, earning her an Oscar nomination and just eternal pop culture real estate. Pretty Woman, with its charm, commanded both audiences and the spring and summer of 1990. Will Smith punches an alien in the face while Jeff Goldblum hacks intergalactic Wi-Fi signals in Independence Day, the explosive July 4th sci-fi spectacle that redefined the phrase popcorn movie in 1996. I think if the 4th of July ever needed an official movie, that Independence Day would win by unanimous explosion. Director Roland Emmerich really did turn global annihilation into a fun popcorn event, and Will Smith, he officially became the king of summer blockbusters by punching an alien in the face and then lighting a cigar. This sci-fi spectacle, of course, is much less about realism and much more about scale and grandeur and patriotism, and Jeff Goldblum delivering tech-babbling word salad while outsmarting alien firewalls. That White House explosion, really in one shot, I think became the cinematic snapshot of the decade, with Bill Pullman giving a rousing speech that felt like a cross between Abraham Lincoln and Braveheart, yet somehow still managed to tug at the heroic drawstrings. Multiplex audiences worldwide stood and cheered for this movie. It was a movie where plot holes were forgiven as long as something exploded every 10 minutes or a quotable line was being dropped. I watched this movie so many times that summer with my friends. We certainly contributed to its box office haul of over $800 million. It really would become the blockbuster template for the rest of the 90s and beyond. Merchandise flew off the shelves, and Will Smith's star power just went supernova after this movie. Critics, of course, may have grumbled about cliches, but audience didn't care. The cliches were what we loved about this movie, and we were all too busy watching aliens get wrecked by Earth's moxie to even care about it. I mean, Independence Day is pure, unapologetic spectacle, and that's why it still delivers to this day. In King of New York, Christopher Walken plays the most unusually smooth drug lord to ever ride a limo, as Abel Ferrara's gritty crime saga turns Manhattan into a war zone of ambition, corruption, and sudden violence, with a pre-Lawrence Larry Fishburne scene stealing like a bandit in the night. Long before prestige crime dramas became the streaming series norm, Abel Ferrara dropped this gritty, stylish gangster movie. King of New York was a bullet-riddled saga wrapped in street grit and soaked in a brutal elegance. Christopher Walken here plays Frank White. He's just out of prison when the movie starts, and he's ready to reclaim his throne, but not just with violence, but with a twisted sense of philanthropy. He's like a Robin Hood in a tailored suit with a gun in his belt, wanting to rebuild up his community on a foundation of bullets, which never really goes well. And with a loaded supporting cast with names like Fishburne and Snipes and Caruso and Argo, the movie really is a who's who of 90s cool, especially from Fishburne, who without question steals the show as the trigger-happy enforcer Jimmy Jump. He just brings an energy to this movie that feels like it could detonate at any minute. He's a true cinematic wild card. Critics were split on this one. Some saw it as a morally murky mess. Others hailed it as an operatic take on urban decay. I've personally always loved this movie since I was a teen. Something about it just always appealed to me, particularly from Walken's confidence, no matter what the situation was. This movie's influence would be felt for years in hip hop and fashion and even TV crime dramas. I mean, this movie just oozes attitude. It doesn't care at all about your opinion or your traditional arcs, and it gave Walken some of his most meme-worthy material long before memes even existed. King of New York is what happens when art house meets bullet casings, and somehow it goes together like peanut butter and jelly. In this one, Bruce Willis flies a cab in the future, Mila Jovovich speaks divine gibberish, and Chris Tucker invents intergalactic glam radio in Luc Besson's The Fifth Element from 1997, a wild, neon-drenched sci-fi opera that defies logic, has the layers of an onion, and demands style points. Now, you've never seen a sci-fi movie like The Fifth Element. It's part space opera, part fashion show, part Looney Tunes episode. I mean, Luc Besson's futuristic roller coaster here delivers spectacle with style and just the right amount of nonsense to make it all fun. Bruce Willis is playing this flying, taxi-driving ex-soldier who suddenly finds himself as the galaxy's only hope, thanks to this mysterious orange-haired supreme being played by Mila Jovovich. Add Gary Oldman as a vibrant villain channeling Eastern European art critic, and you've got a cinematic chaos on your hands. Glorious, vibrant, mesmerizing chaos. When this movie landed in 1997, it did divide critics, but it dazzled audiences who were just ready for something ambitious and visually bonkers in that pre-Matrix sci-fi landscape. Now, admittedly, I enjoyed this movie, but it didn't really grab me when it was released. But it is a movie that I really have grown to enjoy as I've gotten older, oddly enough. I always have loved Chris Tucker's performance. His high decibel DJ Ruby Rod is truly a master class of absurd humor. And over the time, I mean, The Fifth Element has become a cult favorite, especially amongst fans who want their dystopia with a vibrant color palette, loads of visual spectacle, and a hefty sprinkle of weirdness added on top, resulting in a movie that's just beautifully insane and timeless and totally unforgettable in all the best ways. In 1993's Falling Down, Michael Douglas ditches traffic, trades his briefcase for a baseball bat, and goes full rage quit mode through Los Angeles in this unhinged suburban meltdown that's part thriller, part social commentary, and all tension. Michael Douglas, rocking a stiff buzz cut and a short sleeve button down, plays a man who abandons his car in LA traffic and embarks on a very bad day through the city that inevitably pushes every single one of his buttons, kind of resulting in a train wreck you can't look away from the price of a soda, burgers being served after breakfast hours, street punks, even a golf course become targets of this guy's slow-burning fury as his day spirals out of control. Director Joel Schumacher excellently taps into that early 90s urban anxiety with a vengeance, crafting a thriller that feels part cautionary tale and part urban legend. It really struck a nerve in 1993, kind of arriving at a moment when economic frustration and social tensions and just angry white guy culture were boiling over. The movie doesn't at all excuse Douglas's rampage. It more so watches him unravel with equal parts horror and fascination. Also, let's not forget Robert Duvall, who's fantastic in this movie, playing the one sane man in Los Angeles on his last day before retirement, naturally, who just comes in and cements the entire film in a grounded reality. Back then, audiences didn't really know whether to cheer or to cringe. It was super creepy watching it as a kid, and really unlike anything I'd ever seen at the time. I found Douglas's unraveling just to be terrifying, and really watching as an adult, he still very much is, but just in a much more complex way. I mean, These days, falling down kind of plays like a time capsule of pre-internet rage, back when being offline didn't mean peace, it meant unpredictable violence. It's a film that kind of sparked debate on mental health and gun culture and what it means to snap in a world that never seems to give you a break. In this one, Wesley Snipes brings the shades, a trench coat, plenty of his own gadgets, and a whole lot of martial arts skill as a half vampire, half vigilante who slices through bloodsuckers in Blade, the 1998 comic book adaptation that kickstarted a whole new era of superhero movies, even if Marvel low-key refuses to admit it. Before Iron Man suited up and long before Spider-Man swung into box office glory, there was Blade, a leather-clad vampire slayer who, outside of the Punisher, moonlit as Marvel's first big-screen badass. It was released in 1998, and it did arrive like a stake through the heart of stale action flicks, offering a dark, stylish, and violent take on the comic book movie formula that audiences didn't even know they were craving until they got to see it. Wesley Snipes just knocked it out of the park as Blade, a half-human, half-vampire daywalker with the swagger of Shaft and the sword skills of a samurai. He hunted the undead with extreme prejudice, and it kicked total ass. His grizzled mentor, Whistler, played to perfection by Chris Christopherson, gave the film a great duo. Then as the villain, Stephen Dorff, he plays Deacon Frost with just a nicely calibrated gusto, and Blade was a sleeper hit that redefined what a comic book movie could be. It could be bloody, it could be R-rated, and it could be actually cool. I mean, the opening rave scene, complete with sprinklers spraying blood, was still one of the most unforgettable intros in any action movie. I remember calling in sick from work one day and sneaking into the theater to watch this movie and Van Damme's knockoff, and Blade was clearly the generational film I watched that day. Though it flew under the radar critically at the time, I do think that Blade paved the way for the modern superhero boom. Without it, there's no X-Men, there's no MCU. It wasn't just a movie. Blade was a comic book movie resurrection. Now, before shared cinematic universes were cool, Kevin Smith would deliver 1995's Mallrats, sending Jason Lee and Jeremy London wandering the mall, chasing after girls, comic book legends, and getting pretzel-based revenge in a slacker comedy that's just got a heart full of geekdom. Before nerd culture ruled the world, Mallrats was busy loitering over by the food court, talking comics, talking girls, and delivering stink palms. Kevin Smith's second feature after Clerks traded black and white philosophy for full-color adolescence as slackers T.S. and Brody wander a New Jersey mall trying to win back their girlfriends and maybe bump into Stan Lee along the way. Now, Mallrats mega belly flopped at the box office. Critics didn't get it, and audiences weren't quite ready for comic book deep cuts and extended debates about superhero anatomy. But as the years passed, this movie did find its people. It came out my junior year, and I watched it anytime it was on cable, but I really grew to love it later in college. And on DVD, it really just became a rite of passage for college kids and skateboarders and anyone who knew that hanging out and doing nothing at the mall was secretly doing everything. Jason Lee's Brody is a patron saint of pop culture obsessives. His monologues kind of feel like Reddit threads long before Reddit existed, and Smith's reoccurring characters, Jay and Silent Bob, would be introduced to a wider audience, turning them into just 90s stoner icons. A young Ben Affleck plays the typical cocky retail manager. Shannon Doherty is great in this one as well, and Mallrats is now a time capsule of the pre-Amazon mall era where the only algorithms were which order to visit your favorite stores. It's messy, it's juvenile, it's gloriously immature, yet somehow still a blast, just like your 20s. In 1998's American History X, Edward Norton delivers a powerhouse performance as a reformed neo-Nazi and a hard-hitting portrait of hate and redemption and the brutal cycles that bind them. This was a film that punched right through ideology and landed straight in the gut. Now, American History X is one of those movies that pulls no punches and it results in a master class of uneasiness and tension. Released in 1998, it was pretty much like a grenade lobbed into the conversation about race and hate and social divide. I think Edward Norton is cinematic perfection in this one with a performance so raw and unsettling it practically burns a hole through the screen as a reformed neo-Nazi trying to keep his brother from following in his footsteps. I think Norton delivers the full spectrum of emotion. He delivers intensity, intellect, and just the terrifying transformation this movie needed. This is one of those films that kind of demands that you sit with it, no matter how uncomfortable it is. I mean, the black and white flashbacks, they're stark and haunting. That curb scene, it's unshakable, and yet it's not just about the shock value here. There's an empathy, there's an emotional weight beneath this story. It's a story about the cost of hate, not just to others, but to yourself and those you love around you. And when it was released, American History X, of course, earned a lot of acclaim, but it also garnered a lot of controversy as well. Director Tony Kaye disowned the final cut of the movie, but it did find its audience. I remember seeing this movie. It was a cold, rainy day, and coming out of the cinema, this movie lingered with me for a long time, and I was not alone. I mean, it left a lasting cultural scar. I mean, in classrooms, film forums, late night dorm debates. I mean, American History X sparked serious conversations, and it brought uncomfortable truths into focus. And even today, it feels disturbingly relevant. Its impact is undeniable. Its messages were urgent. And Edward Norton, I mean, he walked into this one and straight into an Oscar nomination, forever changing how audiences saw him. In Donnie Brasco, Johnny Depp goes deep undercover inside the mob and finds a reluctant mentor in Al Pacino in a gripping, based on true events crime drama that explores loyalty, betrayal, and the high cost of a wiretap. Forget about it. With those three words, Donnie Brasco became more than just a mob movie. It officially became a quotable cultural artifact. This undercover drama paired Johnny Depp with Al Pacino in a very low-key but extremely high-stakes story about mob loyalty, hierarchy, and disco-era FBI wiretaps. Here, Johnny Depp plays a real-life undercover agent, Joe Pistone, who infiltrated the mafia by getting close to Lefty Ruggiero, a weary, low-ranking mobster played here with a surprising vulnerability by Pacino. Their relationship really is the core and the heart of this film. It's less about shootouts and more about emotional shakedowns. This movie is less Goodfellas and more Godfather meets buddy movie with betrayal hanging over everything like a guillotine. Critics loved the restraint, and Pacino gave one of his most grounded performances of the decade. No shouting, no yelling, just sadness. And Depp, coming off of his quirky indie streak, proved that he could still do drama with the best of them. And let's not forget Bruno Kirby and Michael Madsen and Anne Hesh rounding out a stellar 90s cast. I loved this movie as a teen. Naturally, I'm Italian, so I pretty much love all mobster movies. I read the book. It was another film that pulled me into writing when I was younger. It didn't explode at the box office, but Donnie Brasco quietly became a gangster film favorite, especially for those who like their mob stories with more emotional touches. Plus, it taught a generation that forget about it means anything, everything, and nothing. In 1995's Friday, Ice Cube and Chris Tucker try to survive a single chaotic day in Crenshaw out on the front porch in a hilarious slice-of-life comedy that gave us unforgettable catchphrases, hysterical neighborhood drama, and a buffet of iconic moments. To me, Friday is just a simple but hilarious and equally heartfelt snapshot of life in South Central LA, where the biggest threats are boredom, drug-dealing ice cream man and his cronies, and Debo. I mean, Friday is the kind of movie where almost nothing happens, yet everything seems to happen, and in the funniest and most quotable way possible. Ice Cube plays Craig. He's a laid-off everyman who got fired on his day off, and he's hanging out on the porch for a day with his fast-talking, weed-smoking friend Smokey in a career-making role by Chris Tucker. And really what follows is just a series of escalating misadventures involving weed and bullies and neighborhood crackheads and the occasional uppercut. I mean, this movie is just filled with supporting characters that all leave their imprint. I remember watching this movie with some friends one night when we were partying and yada, yada, yada. I think I might have had an out of body experience while watching this movie from laughing so hard when it hit theaters. Friday became a sleeper hit, loved by audiences, mostly ignored by critics, but over time it became a cultural cornerstone, launching a trilogy, launching Chris Tucker's career, boosting Ice Cube's production power, and proving that black comedies could be fun, laid back, slice of life stories, and still be wildly entertaining. Friday also gave us John Witherspoon's unforgettable dad wisdom in a neighborhood that felt so vivid you felt like you'd been there. Friday wasn't just funny, it was real, and for millions of fans, it's still the perfect movie to throw on to kick off the weekend. In 1995's 12 Monkeys, Bruce Willis plays a time-traveling convict trying to stop a global plague while Brad Pitt steals scenes like a twitchy mental patient with revolutionary aspirations in a time travel flick all to its own. Now, Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys isn't just a movie you casually toss on, it's a bleak, brain-bending cocktail of paranoia and fate with more layers than an onion. It's like somebody dropped Blade Runner into a fever dream, then added a shot of Outbreak Panic to it. Bruce Willis, in one of his most grounded, bizarre, and just overall vulnerable performances, plays this prisoner that's sent back in time to find the origins of a virus that wiped out most of humanity. It's a film that spirals through time loops and existential crisis and somehow makes it all make complete sense while also leaving you almost completely unsure of anything. This movie just completely tripped me out when I watched it as a teen for the first time, and it quickly became repeat viewing when I bought a copy on DVD. Brad Pitt, fantastic here, nominated for an Oscar, just goes gloriously off the rails as this babbling activist that's just fueled by a truckload of unmedicated chaos. It's one of those roles where you either think he's overacting or maybe just realize he's the most disturbing thing in the entire movie. Now, critically, it was hailed for its direction, its atmosphere, and just its cerebral narrative overall. 12 Monkeys became a cult hit that aged like radioactive wine. It's complex, it's potent, it's not for everybody, but in a decade full of disaster flicks, it was the rare one that made you feel the weight of what we'd already lost before the bombs even dropped. Bone Collector from 1999 delivers Denzel Washington in a medical bed. He plays a quadriplegic forensic genius who teams up with a rookie cop played by Angelina Jolie to hunt a serial killer, leaving behind grotesque clues all across New York City. To me, there's just something wonderfully 90s about a murder mystery that pairs a bed-bound genius with a street-smart rookie and makes it work like a grimy episode of CSI. The Bone Collector really leans hard into the high-concept crime thriller formula with cryptic clues and ticking clocks and a serial killer conveniently always a step ahead. But, I mean, let's be honest, none of this works without Denzel Washington, who somehow manages to command every scene while confined to a hospital bed. It's impressive to say the least. This was a movie that I watched many times on rainy days. It's so tightly written and well acted that I think you can still find intrigue on repeat viewing despite knowing the identity of the killer, and Angelina Jolie, still on the rise, really gives her all as the cop on the edge character with a subtle intensity that I do think plays perfectly off of Denzel's calm brilliance. Their chemistry just clicks enough to keep you rooting for them, even when the plot stretches believability like a rubber band in a freezer. And let's not forget the supporting players either. Queen Latifah, Ed O'Neill, Luis Guzman, and Michael Rooker. It's a great ensemble. Yes, some of the setups are ludicrous, and yes, the killer reveal seems a bit Scooby-Doo-ish, but that's just kind of part of the charm. The Bone Collector isn't aiming for gritty realism. It's the kind of suspense ride you take with popcorn in one hand and just wild guesses in the other. It may not have redefined the genre, but it scratched that late 90s itch for dark alleys and tortured minds and elaborate crime scenes where the killer somehow always has a flair for the dramatic. It's not prestige, but The Bone Collector is still plenty pulpy and plenty satisfying. Barry Sonnenfeld's Men in Black from 1997 gives us the duo of Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones donning the sharpest suits in sci-fi as secret agents policing Earth's extraterrestrial activities, all while cracking wise and saving the world from intergalactic bugs. Men in Black is what happens when sci-fi goes clubbing with buddy cop comedy. Will Smith, riding the wave of Independence Day success, shows up as Agent J, a wisecracking NYPD cop recruited into a shadowy agency that handles all things alien-related, and Tommy Lee Jones, grumpy and deadpan as ever, plays Agent K, the partner who's been there and seen it all, and there is no denying that the duo of Smith and Jones are what made this movie a hit. Director Barry Sonnenfeld does keep the pace tight and the tone bouncy, delivering a pure crowd pleaser that blends slick effects with dry humor. But really, the secret weapon of this movie is Vincent D'Onofrio's just hilariously grotesque performance as the farmer turned alien host, providing this movie with the intimidating but still very cartoonish villain that it desperately needed. This was a movie that just absolutely captured the zeitgeist. It was everywhere, and beyond the blockbuster thrills on the screen, Men in Black became a cultural event. The Ray-Bans, they were an instant trend. The neuralizer was every millennial's fantasy for erasing awkward memories, and that theme song, get it stuck in your head and forget about it. It's there all day. Will Smith dropped a chart-topping song with a music video that was just as heavily played as this movie. It's really rare for a movie this weird to hit this big, but Men in Black made weird cool. It brought aliens out of the shadows and into the multiplexes, forever changing the way we imagined little green alien men. Flashy and fun and smart enough to sneak in a metaphor or two, Men in Black was sci-fi with swagger, and it's still an entertaining adventure for the family today. In Unforgiven from 1992, Clint Eastwood directs and stars as a retired killer dragged back into the gunslinger life for one last bloody job in this Oscar-winning Western that rewrote the rules for the genre in the modern era. Now forget the white hats and the black hats, Unforgiven is all about the mud. Clint Eastwood dismantles the myth of the noble cowboy, giving us Bill Money, a former outlaw turned pig farmer who is pulled into a bounty hunt that slowly peels away any romance left of the Old West. The result is brutal and meditative and about as far away from the good, the bad, and the ugly as you can ride. Eastwood plays Money with a quiet dread of a man who knows exactly what he's capable of and hates himself for it. Morgan Freeman backs him up as Ned, the reluctant partner, and Gene Hackman is electric as Little Bill, the sadistic sheriff whose idea of justice includes a hammer and zero patience. Now, normally not a huge Western guy outside of Young Guns and occasionally Tombstone, I loved this movie. I thought it was the total package, and I thought it really kicked ass. This is a Western that just burns with consequence. Every gunshot hurts, every decision scars, and every heroic act feels drenched in guilt, and it's really no wonder the movie scooped up 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, as well as helping redefine Eastwood's career from a movie tough guy to a serious filmmaker. Unforgiven was the Western that told the genre to grow up. There was no stylish duels, no sunset rides, just regret and violence and the harsh truth that legends are usually just killers with better aim and faster reflexes. It's not just one of the best Westerns of the 90s, Unforgiven is one of the best movies of the decade. Leaving Las Vegas from 1995 showcases Nicolas Cage giving a haunting, Oscar-winning performance as a suicidal alcoholic who heads out to Vegas to drink himself to death and finds an unexpected connection with a compassionate sex worker played by Elizabeth Shue. Now, this is far from your upbeat Vegas story. There are no Elvis impersonators, no glitzy blackjack wins, and definitely no fun hangovers to laugh about. Leaving Las Vegas is raw, it's intimate, and just emotionally devastating. It's an unflinching portrait of two broken people who really come to find comfort in each other's wreckage. I saw this movie later in college and I thought it was phenomenal. It's certainly not one of those movies you just pop in, you gotta be in the mood for it, but when you are, the results will be impactful. Nicolas Cage disappears into Ben Sanderson, a Hollywood screenwriter who has lost everything to the bottle and has no plans on stopping. His spiral feels so real that it is unsettling, and Cage earned his Oscar the hard way by just making you believe every slurred word and trembling hand. And opposite him, Elizabeth Shue delivers a quiet powerhouse performance as Sarah, a woman surviving her own kind of nightmare with a broken grace and a strength and a vulnerability of her own. Michael Figgis's direction is dreamlike, but he never romanticizes the despair. The Vegas lights kind of flicker like dying stars, and even the city's nonstop energy just can't hide the emptiness that these characters carry with them. This movie really did strike a chord with critics and audiences alike for its honesty. It wasn't trying to fix anything or offer redemption. It just kind of watched quietly like a fly on the wall as two people tried to be human for each other before the inevitable end. And as far as 90s dramas go, you cut deeper. It's not an easy movie to watch, but it's definitely even harder to forget. In Groundhog Day from 1993, Bill Murray plays a cynical weatherman trapped in an amusing time loop, reliving the same day in a small town over and over again until he finally gets it right, or at least gets it less wrong. Really, Groundhog Day is the kind of high-concept comedy that could have easily been a one-joke gimmick and then went and became a modern classic. Bill Murray stars as Phil Connors, a TV weatherman who's arrogant, bitter, and deeply allergic to small-town charm, and when he's sent to cover the Groundhog Day festivities in Punxsutawney, he ends up trapped in a time loop where February 2nd repeats again and again and again, and the result is hilarious. I loved this movie growing up. I still do. Anytime it's on, I'm sitting there for it. I mean, what could have easily been a Twilight Zone rerun with jokes turned into something sneakily profound? I mean, Phil's journey from jerk to decent human plays out across dozens of repeated days, each one offering new chances, new regrets, and yes, new piano skills. And I think Murray really does effectively walk that tightrope between dry sarcasm and quiet heartbreak, making the transformation believable without ever turning sappy. I mean, he's essentially playing a toned-down Frank Cross from Scrooged here, and it works. Director Harold Ramis keeps the tone light but never shallow, and the film really became an unexpected favorite. I mean, relatable to anyone who's ever been stuck in their own rut. Plus, it's truly funny, like still quotable 30 years later funny. And over the years, Groundhog Day has become more than a movie. It's become a metaphor for monotony, for redemption, and for doing better and laughing all the way there. James Mangold would do the unthinkable in 1997's Copland by having Sylvester Stallone trade in his action hero persona to play a quiet New Jersey sheriff caught between corrupt New York City cops and his own fading sense of duty, and the result, to me at least, would be a timeless crime classic. I think we could all agree Copland was that movie that made everybody stop and say, wait, Stallone can really act? Gone were the muscles and the one-liners. This was a subdued, overweight, hearing-impaired sheriff who mumbled much more than he punched, and it worked like a charm. It was fantastic for this movie. Stallone's turn as Freddy here is sad, it's sympathetic, and surprisingly layered, effectively anchoring this gritty crime drama that's just bursting with testosterone and moral decay otherwise. And the cast, they're fantastic. It's absolutely stacked. Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, and Robert De Niro all playing cops and characters with various shades of corruption and conscience. Copland is just a movie that oozes tension as Freddy slowly realizes he can't just look the other way anymore. This was really a shocking movie to me when I watched it for the first time. It was on the shelf in the video store in the new release section. I had no idea it was even out. It had Stallone in it, so I grabbed it, and it was absolutely different than anything I expected, but all the better for it. I think director James Mangold really crafts a moody, slow burn story that kind of feels like a throwback to 70s character dramas. It's less about the gunfights, though there is a great one late in the game. It's more about the internal battles. It bombed at the box office, but it grew in stature over time, especially for Stallone, who reminded the world there was much more behind those squints than just Rocky and Rambo. It's not flashy, but Copland sticks with you like a moral hangover after years of bad choices. 1997's Good Will Hunting featured Matt Damon playing a brilliant but troubled janitor whose mathematical gifts and emotional wounds draw the attention of a therapist played by Robin Williams in his most quietly powerful role. How do you like them apples may have been the quote, but Good Will Hunting did give us much more than bar banter. It gave us Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's breakout, it gave us Robin Williams' Oscar-winning performance, and it gave us the ultimate message that sometimes the smartest thing a person can do is admit they need a little bit of help. Damon plays Will Hunting, a South Boston genius who's happier punching dudes in the parking lots than solving equations, but when a professor spots his talent, Will is forced into therapy with Sean Maguire, a grieving widower played with a weary warmth by Robin Williams, and what follows is much less about numerical math and much more about emotional math. What adds up, what doesn't, how to stop running from yourself. Director Gus Van Sant really does keep the camera close. He keeps the tone intimate. He lets the performances do the heavy lifting, and it works. Williams steals the show with a monologue about love and loss that still wrecks people decades later. The soundtrack is fantastic. It's pure melancholy perfection. This was the rare 90s drama that blended brain and heart without pandering to either. Much like Williams delivered with Dead Poets Society in the 80s, this movie just hit audiences right in the feelings. It's a film about potential, pain, and the healing power of a good cry on a park bench, and with its uplifting spirit, it's one of those dramas that you can easily rewatch. Tony Scott's stylish True Romance from 1993 gives us Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette playing lovers on the run with a suitcase full of stolen drugs and every criminal in America chasing them in this Quentin Tarantino penned cult classic. Now, to me, True Romance is like a mixtape of 90s cool. It's violent, romantic, funny, passionate, and constantly teetering on the edge of chaos. Directed by Tony Scott and written by Quentin Tarantino before he became a household name, this film plays like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of filtered through a video store clerk's dream journal. It's part love story, part shoot 'em up, all style. Christian Slater plays Clarence. He's a comic book nerd who marries Patricia Arquette's Alabama, a kind-hearted call girl with grit to spare, and after a botched confrontation with her pimp, played by Gary Oldman in full dreadlocked madness here, the couple ends up with a suitcase full of cocaine and the plan of visiting LA. Sadly, though, the mob has other plans, and that's where the movie heads. I remember stumbling into this one as a teen one night on cable. I caught it, watched it, stuck with me ever since. I think every supporting actor here pops. Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken trade threats in a legendary scene. Brad Pitt, he makes bong hitting an art form. Gandolfini gets disturbingly intense in a hotel room. Val Kilmer plays Elvis. This movie had it all, and I loved it. Though it did bomb at the box office, True Romance gained cult status, I think, thanks to its quotable dialogue, its hyper-violence, and just chaotic energy. It's one of those films that kind of feels like it was made just for the cool kids who didn't realize it was pretty much about vulnerability and sacrifice and wild devotion. You just don't watch True Romance, you kind of fall for it, flaws and all. 1996's Mission Impossible would kick off a multi-decade spanning franchise and introduce us to Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt, a super spy framed for betrayal who must pull off impossible missions like dangling from ceilings and outrunning exploding fish tanks to prove his innocence. Now, before Mission Impossible became the high-octane, international, death-defying mega franchise we know today, it started as a sleek, twisty spy thriller directed by Brian De Palma, where the plot twists moved faster than the camera and Tom Cruise still had both feet on the ground most of the time. This first installment really, to me, is all about the deception, the double crosses, and dutifully sweating through every nerve-wracking scene. When Ethan Hunt's IMF team is wiped out for the most part, he goes rogue to clear his name and expose the real mole, leading to several iconic sequences that still hold up great today, most famously, to me at least, that silent CIA vault heist where a single bead of sweat is able to generate more suspense than most modern blockbusters. I think Cruise is at his most intense here, running, flipping, typing furiously, all with that unwavering 1,000-yard stare. The supporting cast here includes Jon Voight and Ving Rhames and Jean Reno and Emilio Estevez for a few scenes, all of whom are fantastic. But I mean, really, this was the movie that announced Mission Impossible as Cruise's personal playground. We really watched this movie so many times at the drive-in that summer it was released. It was the summer after my senior year, and I really spent almost every night there rotating screens, watching the different movies, and this was one of them in rotation. The plot left people scratching their heads in certain places, but the action and the stylish direction made it clear that this was espionage for the new millennium. And when that helicopter chases that train through the tunnel, that's blockbuster territory right there. This film laid the groundwork for one of the most successful action franchises ever, and Cruise was really just getting started. In 1999's The Green Mile, Tom Hanks plays a prison guard who meets a gentle giant on death row, played by Michael Duncan Clark, who may just have the divine gift of power to heal more than wounds. Now, The Green Mile isn't just a movie, it's a full-on emotional marathon. Based on Stephen King's novel, it follows Tom Hanks as a death row prison guard in the 1930s who meets John Coffey, played by Michael Clark Duncan, a towering inmate with miraculous powers and the soul of a gentle giant. And what unfolds is part supernatural mystery, part moral reckoning, and really all heartbreak. Frank Darabont brings a rich, slow burn storytelling here by really just allowing the human elements to breathe between the moments of fantasy. Duncan's performance is otherworldly, it's gentle, soulful, and devastating, earning him a much-deserved Oscar nomination. Hanks here does his usual dependable work, anchoring the story with a quiet decency, and yet for a film with such grace, The Green Mile still hits pretty hard. It doesn't shy away from the brutality of the justice system, the pain of injustice, or the way power can be corrupted even in the most sacred institutions. And you add in a sadistic guard, a miraculous mouse, and spots of dialogue that will never leave your brain, and you've got one of the most emotionally loaded 3-hour movies ever made. This was just pure late 90s prestige cinema with a hint of magic. You weren't emotionally prepared the first time you watched it, but that's okay because nobody was. In new Jack City from 1991, Wesley Snipes rules the streets as drug kingpin Nino Brown, while Ice-T and Judd Nelson try to bring down his crack empire in this explosive blend of crime, style, and social commentary. New Jack City would pretty much kick the doors open for early 90s urban crime dramas, and it dared to be both flashy and socially conscious. Wesley Snipes is 100% magnetic as Nino Brown, a cold-blooded drug lord running New York like his own little kingdom, with equal parts Scarface and Wall Street wise guy. And opposite him, Ice-T and Judd Nelson are great, playing cops trying to take him down before taking each other out first. This was another of those late-night cable TV finds for me as a teen, and I absolutely loved it. Director Mario Van Peebles, who also co-stars in this one, is able to just give the film a fast, stylish energy with plenty of 90s edge. Think bold color palettes, big coats, bigger guns, and a New Jack Swing soundtrack that still bumps to this day. But I mean, beneath all of the swagger is still a bleak commentary on the crack epidemic and just the communities that it devastated. It was the rare action crime flick that actually had something to say and the guts to say it. Wesley Snipes, as I said, absolutely owns the role of Nino Brown, delivering lines like "sit your $5 ass down before I make change," with a theatrical menace that still echoes in pop culture to this day. Ice-T was great as well. He may have came in as a rapper turned actor, but this was the movie that proved he could hold his own on screen. And more than 30 years later, New Jack City still remains iconic. It was a wake-up call, a style guide, and just a showcase for Black talent, both behind and in front of the camera. 1990's Ghost featured Patrick Swayze returning from beyond the grave to protect Demi Moore with the help of Whoopi Goldberg's scene-stealing psychic in a supernatural romance that somehow made pottery sexy. There's really no logical reason Ghost should have worked as well as it did. It was a romantic drama, a supernatural thriller, and a pottery-based love story all in one, but albeit against all the odds and maybe thanks to some actual spirits, it would become a pop culture phenomenon. Patrick Swayze plays Sam, a man murdered in the prime of his life who sticks around as a ghost to protect his grieving girlfriend, played by Demi Moore, his only connection to the world of the living. A psychic named Oda Mae Brown, played by Whoopi Goldberg, and really just the most chaotic and just brilliant Oscar-winning performance of the decade. Yes, the pottery scene gets all the press, but Ghost had more than that to offer. It was a tearjerker. It had whispers of a revenge movie to it. It was a metaphysical story about closure, and it certainly captured the zeitgeist. I remember going to movies with my friends, and it seemed like everybody's parents, when this one was released, were going in to see this movie while we were all going to watch probably an action or a comedy of some sorts. I mean, Swayze's great here. He gives one of his most earnest performances, and more, eyebrows and all, is just heartbreakingly good. But I mean, Whoopi, she is the secret sauce. She crashes in like comedic relief and leaves the room with the movie under her arm. Ghost shouldn't have been this emotionally effective or this creepy, and yet it just balances horror and heart like a spiritual rom-com thriller hybrid. I mean, go figure. Ghost became a box office juggernaut, and it will live on in memes and parodies and ceramic reenactments for all time. Boys in the Hood from 1991, Cuba Gooding Jr., Ice Cube, and Morris Chestnut navigate life, loss, and loyalty in South Central Los Angeles in John Singleton's powerful directorial debut that hit like a cultural earthquake. Now, when Boys in the Hood dropped in 1991, it was a lightning rod, it was a gut punch to American cinema, and John Singleton, at just 23 years old, delivered a deeply personal and just absolutely unflinching look at life in South Central Los Angeles, and in doing so, he would become the youngest and first Black director nominated for an Oscar. The story follows Trey, played by Cuba Gooding Jr. He's a bright kid sent to live with his tough love father, Furious Styles, played by Lawrence Fishburne, and Trey, with his friends Doughboy and Ricky, will navigate a world where opportunity and violence exist really on opposite ends of the same street. It's a coming of age story drenched in systemic neglect, heartbreak, and just the ache of wasted potential. Singleton's direction here is confident and naturalistic, just letting the quiet scenes hit just as hard as the gunshots. Ice Cube is fantastic, and his first major acting role proved he was much more than just a rapper, bringing complexity to a character who could have really easily just been one note in lesser hands. And Gooding Jr. is also impressive here in a breakout role. This film's impact was immediate. It launched careers, it sparked conversation, it gave mainstream audiences a view into a community that until then was really just generally reduced to the headlines. The emotional moments of this movie just cut deep, especially that final fade to black. And the cultural echoes of this movie are everywhere, with Singleton creating just an indelible piece of cinematic poetry that did so much more than simply tell a story. In 1999's Office Space, Ron Livingston, after a hypnotherapy session, leads a rebellion against corporate hell in one fraction of a penny at a time in Mike Judge's cult comedy that made hating your job weirdly therapeutic. Now, Office Space is the movie that proved the real villain of the 90s wasn't a serial killer or a corrupt cop. It was middle frickin' management. Mike Judge's cult classic follows Peter. He's a cubicle drone who gets hypnotized into really not caring anymore. It's the ultimate anti-capitalist comedy dressed up in TPS reports and draped in beige walls. The supporting cast is great. Jennifer Aniston, she's fun. She brings a laid-back charm as a disillusioned waitress. Gary Cole's passive-aggressive boss is the stuff of meme legend, and Stephen Root's Milton would redefine staple-related rage for an entire generation. The characters in this movie are exaggerated just enough to feel absurd, but still painfully relatable. And if you've ever had to smile through a forced team meeting, then this movie probably felt like therapy. I remember working retail back in the day. They would give these just obnoxious rah-rah meetings about having to open up more credit accounts. I'd always zone out while they were talking, often thinking of this movie as they would just babble away, trying to make a credit card with like 26% interest sound like a good thing. And really, what's wild is that Office Space flopped when it first hit theaters. It wasn't really until DVD and late-night cable airings that it became a touchstone for every overworked and underappreciated white-collar worker. Suddenly, the world realized it wasn't just a comedy, it was a prophecy. Office Space isn't flashy or high concept, it's just the perfect takedown of workplace drudgery. It's made with dry wit and a fax machine beatdown that just became iconic. Blumberg would definitely not approve of how much we all love this movie, and really, that makes it even better. Nineteen 1992's Deep Cover delivers Lawrence Fishburne going undercover into the drug world with Jeff Goldblum as his unknowingly wild-card crime partner in a slick, noir-infused thriller that dares to ask, what if the line between cop and criminal disappeared? To me, Deep Cover is the kind of slick, moody thriller that just doesn't get enough credit for being a straight-up genre gem. Lawrence Fishburne stars as Russell Stevens, a cop pulled into a DEA operation to infiltrate the LA drug underworld, only to find himself becoming the very thing that he is supposed to destroy. And then there's Jeff Goldblum, just playing a completely unhinged, fast-talking lawyer turned crime kingpin who is honestly terrifying in the most Goldblum way possible. Directed by Bill Duke, the film just wraps its neo-noir bones around very weighty themes: the war on drugs, systemic racism, the morality of undercover police work, but it never forgets along the way to be an entertaining thriller. Fishburne just narrates the whole thing with a world-weary poetry vibe, and the plot moves like a jazz solo, unexpected but still very smooth. The soundtrack is fantastic, led by Dr. Dre and Snoop's title track that was really a cultural movement on its own, just ushering in the G-Funk era and giving us one of the most iconic rap debuts ever. I think Deep Cover was ahead of its time, no question. It combined social critique with street-level pulp in a way that paved the road for later classics like Training Day. It's moody, it's stylish, and it's one of the coolest movies of the 90s that too many people slept on. In 1990's Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin stars as an abandoned kid defending his suburban fortress from bumbling burglars. Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern in a holiday instant classic that turned booby traps into a cinematic art form. Now, before Kevin McAllister booby-trapped his suburban fortress like a grade school Rambo, nobody knew just how far a kid would go to protect his house. Home Alone would turn Christmas into a contact sport and Macaulay Culkin into a global megastar. Directed by Chris Columbus and written by John Hughes, this holiday juggernaut follows little Kevin, accidentally left behind by his chaotic family, forcing him to defend his home from two bumbling burglars, the Wet Bandits, played to absolute slapstick perfection by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. This movie really is the total package. It's got heart, it has hijinks, it's got a tarantula to the face. We watch this movie at least a couple of times every holiday season. It just has that perfect sappy Christmas atmosphere to it that lands so cozily despite its blatant artificiality. But Home Alone isn't just about the traps and the physical comedy, though let's be honest, it is iconic. I mean, outside of that, though, it's still a surprisingly sweet story about independence and forgiveness and that deep family craving at Christmas time that you sometimes get, even the ones that we don't like all too much. This movie was a massive hit. It made nearly $500 million worldwide. It would spawn a franchise and become a holiday staple that still draws huge numbers every December. In 1994's True Lies would give us Arnold Schwarzenegger playing a secret agent balancing family life and spy chaos, while Jamie Lee Curtis goes from housewife to action heroine in James Cameron's high-octane domestic disaster piece riffing on the 007 universe. In True Lies, Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a globe-trotting secret agent whose wife thinks he's just a boring computer salesman, and somehow that's the least ridiculous thing about this amazing summer movie epic. James Cameron's spy action comedy hybrid is what happens when you throw Mission Impossible, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and 007 into a blender and then add a horse chase through a hotel. Arnold's fantastic here. He's at peak charisma in this movie. He's cool, he's lethal, he's got that effective dad next door twist to him, and Jamie Lee Curtis is great as well. She goes from frustrated housewife to lingerie-clad undercover badass in a transformation so iconic it would break PG-13 ratings as she became many a teens as Mrs. Robinson. And then you get Tom Arnold, of all people, stealing scenes as the wisecracking sidekick. This movie was everywhere and had everything. I'll always have fond memories of just sitting at the drive-in with all my friends all summer long watching this movie when it was released. The action is still pretty awesome today. Lots of practical work, not that much digital. There's a nuclear missile on a bridge, a Harrier jet in downtown Miami, a tango. I mean, it's just pure Cameron excess. It's got epic scale, razor sharp pacing, and explosions that, I mean, practically high-five you when they go off, yet somehow it still finds some room for some genuine heart, mostly in the marriage subplot, which was way better than it had any right to be. I mean, True Lies is simply over the top in all the best ways, a rare blockbuster that blends action and comedy without shortchanging either. In The Sixth Sense, Haley Joel Osment saw dead people, Bruce Willis tried to help, and M. Night Shyamalan would redefine the twist ending in a ghost story that left audiences frozen in their seats with their minds totally blown. I see dead people. With those four words, M. Night Shyamalan would become a household name, and The Sixth Sense would become the movie that launched 1,000 rewatches. Released in 1999, this slow burn supernatural drama starred Bruce Willis as a haunted child psychologist trying to help a young boy, and Oscar-nominated Haley Joel Osment, who claims that he can see ghosts. At first, it's a creepy kid movie, then it becomes a deep emotional tale about grief and guilt and redemption, and then that twist, the twist of all twists, you know, the one, even if you haven't seen it, you know it. It's the twist that hit audiences like a ghostly sucker punch and redefined what movie endings could be in the mainstream. The cast is fantastic here. Osment is phenomenal, delivering a performance way beyond his years. Willis dials it way down to deliver one of his most grounded and effective roles, and Toni Collette as the mother trying to hold it all together is really heartbreaking and essential as well. So this movie as well was the total package. The Sixth Sense wasn't just a box office smash, it was a cultural phenomenon. It turned whispers in theaters into gasps, and suddenly everybody was on twist ending alert for years to come. And even today, I still think it is the gold standard for shocking an audience. In 1995's Casino, Robert De Niro runs Vegas, Joe Pesci brings the muscle, and Sharon Stone brings the fire in Martin Scorsese's glitzy, violent tale of money, power, betrayal, and sunglasses inside. Now, Martin Scorsese's Casino is essentially Goodfellas in the desert if Goodfellas snorted way more cocaine, wore a lot more sequins, and added about 30 minutes or so. Released in 1995, this epic chronicles the rise and fall of Ace Rothstein, played by Robert De Niro, a mob-connected casino operator whose entire empire gets tangled up in love and greed, and with the volatile loyalty of one Nicky Santoro, played by a terrifying Joe Pesci, who just really brings full rabid pit bull energy here. Sharon Stone, in my opinion, delivers her career best performance as Ginger, Ace's hustler turned wife, who just spirals out in a whirlwind of manipulation and greed and just addiction and chaos. And there's no denying that she earned every bit of her Oscar nomination. This movie, I think, is just very well rounded. It's a tale of excess told with just relentless momentum. Voiceovers, montages, pop music, needle drops, and brutal violence, all wrapped in a glittery Vegas haze. I think Scorsese makes the 3-hour runtime fly by as if you've just sat down at a blackjack table and blinked. And while often overshadowed by Goodfellas, I think Casino just holds its own as a stunningly just cynical look at how money and power can potentially rot everything they touch in the wrong hands. It's part history lesson, part cautionary tale, full-on Vegas fever dream, and by the time that cornfield scene hits, you're never going to look at a baseball bat the same way again. Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, and Dennis Hopper race against the clock in Speed, the pulse-pounding thriller where a city bus becomes a bomb on wheels and stopping isn't an option unless you're into explosions. Now, Speed is what happens when you combine a ticking time bomb, a moving city bus, and the face of 1994's most quietly intense action star Keanu Reeves, with a dead-eyed and delightfully over-the-top Dennis Hopper holding Los Angeles hostage via remote detonation transit terrorism. Speed was just the adrenaline shot that the 90s action genre needed. Sandra Bullock and her breakout role really is fantastic. She takes the wheel literally and figuratively, and the chemistry between her and Reeves just sparks perfectly for the needs of this movie. This wasn't just a popcorn blast, it was really a master class in escalation. I mean, every time you think the worst is over, they end up jumping the bus over a gap in the freeway or transition to an out-of-control speeding subway. The director, Jan de Bont, he really paces this like a rocket launch with no deceleration, and Mark Mancina's pounding score just still kicks ass to this day. Speed also redefined the idea of high-concept thrillers. What if Die Hard happened on a bus? The answer? $350 million plus worldwide, a spot in pop culture's permanent rotation, and a regrettable cruise ship sequel, but don't let Speed 2 Cruise Control muddy the legacy. The original gave us action done right. Keanu in his pre-Neo era and Sandra Bullock becoming America's movie-going sweetheart, all before the bus ever slowed down. In 1995, Pierce Brosnan stepped into the tux as 007 in GoldenEye, a slick Bond reboot that pitted him against a former MI6 agent gone rogue, complete with exploding pens, tank chases, and a Nintendo game legacy cemented in history. After a 6-year hiatus and the end of the Cold War, Bond was at a crossroads. That was until GoldenEye would crash land into the mid-90s with Pierce Brosnan charming his way into the tux. This movie really had everything: a rogue 00 agent played by Sean Bean, a deadly satellite weapon, and a sexy and villainous Xenia Onatopp who literally crushed men with her thighs. Was this movie subtle? Absolutely not. But was it effective? 100%. Brosnan was fantastic. He balanced suaveness with grit, and director Martin Campbell was able to bring modern flair without ditching the Bond DNA. I mean, growing up in the 80s, I enjoyed and I appreciated the Moore and Dalton Bond movies, but GoldenEye, when it was released, was just next level for a 17 or 18-year-old me, and Brosnan was peak cool. He was like a Irish John Shaft with a martini and a bow tie, from the bungee jump opening to the tank chase through St. Petersburg. I mean, GoldenEye made the franchise feel cool again, and who could forget that iconic N64 video game adaptation, which arguably introduced Bond to an entire generation via headshots and remote mines. I mean, GoldenEye didn't just revive 007, it gave him a stylish upgrade. It gave us Judi Dench's debut as M. It set the tone for a sharper, more aware Bond era, and Brosnan's performance struck the right note between lethal and likable. It may not be the grittiest Bond, but it's definitely one of the slickest, and for many it was the gateway drug into the spy genre. In 1990, Arnold Schwarzenegger would take a wild trip to Mars and into his own fractured mind in Total Recall, a sci-fi mindbender filled with memory wipes, mutants, and more identity crisis than a season of Westworld. Arnold Schwarzenegger would take us on a Martian-themed mindbender in this ultra-violent, ultra-fun sci-fi fever dream from Paul Verhoeven. Total Recall really is what happens when you give Verhoeven a Schwarzenegger-sized budget, a story by Philip K. Dick, and you add an unhealthy obsession with identity, violence, and exploding heads. The result? A fun, sweaty epic full of fake memories, mutant revolutionaries, and the most unforgettable three-breasted supporting character in movie history. By the way, I still say 2 is plenty. Arnold here plays Quaid. He's a construction worker. He has dreams of Mars and a secret identity possibly buried in his brain. And what follows is just a relentless series of chases and betrayals and shootouts and existential panic, all mixed with Verhoeven's signature blood-soaked satire and just future dystopia absurdity. I was like 13, maybe 14 when this movie came out. My grandma wouldn't let me go see it. She even went to our go-to video store and told the lady not to rent R-rated movies to me because of this film. And luckily, I had a friend whose dad loved these action movies. He bought a VHS copy, one that we would go on to watch relentlessly, of course, when everybody was asleep. And this movie still holds up. The film's special effects still look great, with just gloriously grotesque practical work, stop-motion mutants, tracking devices, and skulls that need removal from the nose. I mean, Total Recall isn't just sci-fi action, it's unhinged sci-fi action. It's bold, it's loud, it's definitely weird, and it's still cooler than the other side of the pillow. Rest in peace, Stu Scott. John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, and Bruce Willis crisscross through a world of hitmen, diners, briefcases, and adrenaline shots in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction from 1994, the non-linear crime classic that redefined cinematic cool. Now, by the time Pulp Fiction hit theaters, it kind of felt like someone had jammed a defibrillator into the chest of 90s cinema. With Tarantino at the helm, this wasn't just a movie. Pulp Fiction was a vibe all to its own. It was a mixtape of coolness, carnage, and conversations about foot massages and fast food. The film's structure, told out of order but somehow perfectly timed, just gave new life to non-linear storytelling. I mean, every scene feels iconic. Vincent and Mia's twist, Jules quoting Ezekiel before dropping bodies, the adrenaline shot, the gold watch, it's all burned into pop culture like a Royale with cheese. I remember sneaking into this movie after watching something else. I showed up in the middle. I was completely lost and left early, but a few years later and a little bit older, I was starting college and this movie would really be able to get my fresh set of eyes, and I instantly loved just the controlled insanity of it all. Travolta would get a career revival, Jackson delivered a career-defining monologue, and Uma Thurman became the poster child for postmodern cool with a killer soundtrack and a screenplay that practically sings. Pulp Fiction became the indie success story of the decade, walking away with the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, changing the way movies looked, sounded, and talked. I mean, Pulp Fiction was more than influential. It was contagious, and whether you think it's brilliant or overrated or both, there's no denying its impact. Everybody wanted to make a movie like Pulp Fiction, only Quentin Tarantino actually did. Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, and Demi Moore battle military secrets and courtroom ethics in 1992's A Few Good Men, the legal drama where the truth isn't just inconvenient, it's shouted at you with full-blown intensity because sometimes the truth just can't be handled. Few courtroom scenes in cinema have the electricity of A Few Good Men's climactic "you can't handle the truth" moment, and it's a scene that has entered the pop culture stratosphere for very good reason. Directed by Rob Reiner and adapted from Aaron Sorkin's play, this legal drama delves into military justice with all the gravitas and drama you'd expect from 90s cinema, plus some top-tier acting to boot. Tom Cruise stars as the young, idealistic Navy lawyer tasked with defending two Marines accused of murder. Then you get Jack Nicholson's Colonel Jessup, who just embodies the iron-fisted military mentality to a T, bringing a simmering intensity to his performance that just explodes into one of the most quoted speeches in film history. Then you get Demi Moore. She adds a quiet but powerful performance, kind of caught between duty and conscience. While the plot occasionally does dip into melodrama, the razor-sharp dialogue and just powerhouse performances make this more than your typical courtroom drama. To me, this is like one of those old Hollywood, just old school movies that just kind of relied on acting and writing and direction. The film also taps into some bigger themes about authority and honor and moral ambiguity that still kind of resonate today. And A Few Good Men is the kind of movie that reminds you why dialogue can be as thrilling as a gunfight, especially when delivered with such fire and conviction. Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson hustle street courts and egos in 1992's White Men Can't Jump, a pure summer basketball comedy about trash talk, trust issues, and whether or not Jeopardy is a valid life goal. Me, White Men Can't Jump effortlessly combines basketball, sharp banter, and a surprisingly heartfelt look at friendship and hustling on and off the court. Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson just bounce off each other here with an undeniable chemistry. These dudes really are perfect together for this movie, trading trash talk and life lessons in equal measure. I've always loved this movie. I remember when I was in my teens, I went on a vacation to LA, and getting to play basketball on the same Venice Beach courts this movie was filmed on was certainly an item checked off my bucket list before I even knew what a bucket list was. Directed by Ron Shelton, this film uses street ball as a backdrop for exploring racial stereotypes and economic struggles and just the pursuit of respect. in a world that often feels stacked against you. But the duo's hustle, though, it's not just about money, it's also about survival and kind of proving your worth in a game that's bigger than basketball. The movie's humor is sharp, it's very witty without being cruel, and the supporting cast is fantastic, headlined by a fiery Rosie Perez, who just adds depth and warmth and humor to the story as well. Plus all the basketball sequences, they still feel very dynamic and very realistic, capturing the rhythm of street ball perfectly. And to this day, the action in this movie is still some of the best used in a basketball flick. White Man Can't Jump isn't just a sports comedy, it's a snapshot of like early 90s culture wrapped in sneakers and slam dunks. And to me, it will remain a timeless comedic classic. 70s screen legend Pam Grier plays it cool and calculated in 1997's Jackie Brown, Tarantino's slick and soulful Elmore Leonard adaptation where flight attendants smuggle cash, middlemen double cross, and everybody talks just a little too much. Now, to me, Jackie Brown is the smoothest, most laid-back Tarantino movie with less pulp and more soul. Pam Grier leads as the titular character, a smart and streetwise woman caught between the FBI and a ruthless arms dealer, played by a pleasantly volatile Samuel L. Jackson, with Robert Forster as a bail bondsman and Robert De Niro as a low-key gangster. The film blends crime thriller suspense with sharp dialogue and slow burn tension perfectly. Unlike Tarantino's more frenetic works, Jackie Brown is a movie that takes its time. It builds characters through subtlety and wit. The soundtrack is as cool as the characters, mixing 70s funk and soul to just perfectly match the film's vibe and just overall atmosphere. It's a movie that really rewards patience, in my opinion, with twists that don't really shout at you, but more so whisper, and a protagonist who's always one step ahead from start to finish. This personally has always been my favorite Tarantino movie. I think it also is one of his films that has the most amount of rewatch value to it, and it certainly feels the most grounded in all the best ways. Jackie Brown may not have the same bombast as Tarantino's other films, but it's got style, it's got heart, and the kind of cool confidence that only comes with experience. Here, Keanu Reeves infiltrates a crew of Zen surfer bank robbers led by Patrick Swayze in Point Break from 1991, an action cult classic where adrenaline is a religion and every wave could be your last, but it doesn't matter when you're just living in the moment. Point Break is just a high-octane mix of surf culture and heist thriller that somehow balances extreme sports and explosive shootouts with world-class bravado. Keanu Reeves plays Johnny Utah, an FBI agent who goes undercover in a band of charismatic bank robbers slash surfers, led by the legendary Bodie, played by Patrick Swayze, whose love of surfing and freedom naturally clashes with the law. Director Catherine Bigelow keeps the action taut and stylish, just delivering adrenaline-pumping sequences on land, sea, and in the air. The film is equal parts philosophical and pulse racing, exploring themes of loyalty and risk and the quest for transcendence through the most extreme means possible. I can still remember sitting in the theater and watching some movie and seeing this trailer come on before it, and the mood, the vibe, all of it just grabbed me immediately. So much so I ended up moving to the beach and picking up surfing because it just seemed less stressful than robbing banks. Now, Point Break is also packed with many quotable moments, including Bodie's famous line about living life to the fullest and Utah's moral wrestling with friendship and duty. Point Break quickly became a cult favorite, inspiring remakes and memes and countless viewers to pick up a surfboard. And what Bigelow would bring to the screen, I think, would end up being one of the best pure action movies the 1990s would have to offer. In 1995, Bruce Willis would return as John McClane in Die Hard with a Vengeance, this time teaming up with Samuel L. Jackson, with New York City turning into a playground for them to solve deadly puzzles left from a bomber who's way too into Simon Says. The Die Hard franchise would reach new heights and new puzzles with Die Hard with a Vengeance, turning Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson into reluctant partners who must race through New York City in a deadly citywide scavenger hunt, trying to stop a bomber who has a flair for sadistic riddles. This installment in the franchise would trade in the traditional singular location for a sprawling urban cityscape, and it was perfect for blending fast-paced action, witty banter, and the charming chemistry between Willis and Jackson. This movie just cranks up the scale immensely with car chases, much more action, bomb threats, and enough explosions to give everybody in the city a headache. So by adapting more of that Lethal Weapon formula, Die Hard 3 was able to turn into a massive hit off a script that was intended to be a Lethal Weapon movie. Now, personally, I've always loved this one, and outside of the obvious quality and the nostalgia of the first, I would say this is the most superior film in the franchise due to the level of difficulty and all the moving pieces it has. Director John McTiernan delivers an action thriller that's part buddy comedy, part high-stakes puzzles with memorable moments like the flooded viaduct, car chase early in the third act, and this awesome finale on the tanker that delivers plenty of gunplay and just action and a great fight sequence. Die Hard with a Vengeance wasn't just another sequel, it was Die Hard with kind of a fresh twist, delivering the kind of energy that I think enables the film to remain a timeless action classic that's fueled on great writing, practical action, and its great cast of characters. Tom Hanks here leads a war-torn rescue mission in Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan from 1998, the absolutely visceral World War II epic that opens with D-Day chaos and marches straight into cinematic history, one bullet and brother at a time. I think many would agree that Saving Private Ryan changed war movies forever with its gut-wrenching, immersive depiction of the D-Day invasion and its aftermath. I think it also set a new standard in the genre for realism and depiction of sacrifice. The movie opens with one of the most harrowing battle sequences ever put to film, dropping viewers right into the chaos, fear, and heartbreak of combat like never seen before cinematically. I can still remember sitting in the theater, seeing that opening sequence for the first time like it was yesterday. Tom Hanks here, he's fantastic. He stars as Captain Miller. He's tasked with finding and bringing home Private James Ryan, the last surviving brother of 4 servicemen, and the film just, smoothly and just effortlessly explores the moral complexity of sacrifice and duty, all against the backdrop of one of history's most deadliest conflicts. I think Spielberg's direction, Kaminsky's gritty cinematography, and the cast's just masterfully committed performances brought unprecedented just authenticity to the screen in this movie. This film's impact was absolutely immediate. It was everywhere, winning multiple Oscars and just becoming a cultural touchstone for how war is portrayed in film. It's really a roller coaster of unnerving tension and emotion and action, making Saving Private Ryan more than a movie. It's a visceral experience that kind of honors the courage and the cost of those who fought, and it remains a benchmark for war cinema. Ben Stiller, Cameron Diaz, and Matt Dillon in a truly unfortunate zipper incident headline There's Something About Mary, an outrageous comedy from 1998 from the Farrelly brothers about love, obsession, and hair gel that ended up changing rom-coms forever. When the Farrelly brothers unleashed There's Something About Mary in 98, romantic comedies pretty much changed overnight, veering from cloying and predictable to wild and weird, yet somehow still lovable. This one follows Stiller as an awkward everyman who has a decades-old crush on his high school dream girl Mary, played by Cameron Diaz, and what begins as a sweet reunion attempt quickly spirals into a competition between increasingly unhinged suitors, all desperate for Mary's affection. I think the movie really does just walk a tightrope between gross out gags and genuine heart. I think Diaz absolutely shines as Mary, delivering the just effortlessly cool and kind-hearted woman who could plausibly drive a dozen men to insanity. I think Stiller is hilarious as well, really just playing exasperated like it's a contact sport, and supporting players like Matt Dillon and Chris Elliott really do crank up the sleeves with comedic precision. I think everybody gets their moment to land some laughs, and the result is, to me at least, a laugh out loud comedy from start to finish. But what I do really think sets something about Mary apart was just its fearless sense of humor. The Fairleys weren't afraid to go big or inappropriate, but they did anchor the chaos with enough charm to keep audiences on their side. The movie was an absolute box office juggernaut. It crushed R-rated comedy expectations. It gave us Jonathan Richman as a chorus singing troubadour. There are so many comical lines and scenes in this movie, and in short, there's something about Mary made bodily fluids funny. It made Cameron Diaz a superstar, and it made awkwardness feel sort of heroic. Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman clashed in the nuclear submarine thriller Crimson Tide from 1995, a movie that turns claustrophobic tension into Shakespearean high drama with torpedoes, stare-downs, and enough sweat to fill up the sub. Crimson Tide is the cinematic equivalent of locking two alpha intellects into a steel tube full of nukes and just watching the sparks fly. Directed by Tony Scott and written with a punchy urgency, this submarine thriller pits Hackman's old-school shoot-first Captain Ramsey against Washington's young, cerebral Lieutenant Commander Hunter during a standoff over launching missiles without full orders. It's a tried-and-true submarine flick for sure, but it's also a philosophical showdown that's just wrapped in torpedoes and commands and soaked in sweat. Hackman's chewing scenery with a smirk while Washington's delivering a righteous intensity that all but burns through the screen. I really think this movie moves like a coiled spring. It's tight, it's tense, it's punctuated perfectly by Hans Zimmer's thunderous score that just overflowed with chance, because it was mid-90s cinema after all. The tension that drives this movie isn't about whether the world will end, it's more about who gets to decide if it should, and that moral dilemma at the core just elevates this movie above genre conventions, turning mutiny and chain of command into just metaphysical battlegrounds. I remember seeing this movie in the theater with an uncle. He loved these military flicks, and despite being younger, I was all in on the drama and the suspense here. I think Scott's stylized direction just gives the whole thing a slick, anxious energy, and every supporting player from James Gandolfini to Viggo Mortensen just are able to add to this claustrophobic pressure cooker. Crimson Tide didn't just give us a great thriller, it gave us a just masterclass in verbal sparring and power dynamics, all wrapped in a film that relied on pure character acting. Steven Spielberg's 1993 blockbuster Jurassic Park brings dinosaurs back to life and nearly kills Jeff Goldblum in doing so, in the ultimate cautionary tale about science, capitalism, and theme parks with terrible security protocols. Welcome to Jurassic Park, where science played God, Jeff Goldblum's shirt was comically unbuttoned, and Spielberg reminded us that cinematic blockbusters could still inspire awe. Jurassic Park really was the defining event film of the decade, blending cutting-edge CGI, animatronic wizardry, and sheer cinematic wonder into something truly prehistoric in scale. The plot was simple at its core, but highly inventive. A billionaire builds a dinosaur theme park using recovered dino DNA. I mean, what could go wrong? Well, of course, everything will go wrong. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum just anchor the chaos here with grounded, fantastic performances that really turned their characters into legends, while Richard Attenborough's twinkly-eyed John Hammond just went from lovable grandpa to a cautionary tale in record time. This movie really was everywhere when it was released. I remember this being one of the first movies that I watched multiple times in the theater. Spielberg just masterfully balanced spectacle and suspense. I mean, the T-Rex breakout, it's still terrifying. The raptors in the kitchen, it's just dino carnage galore. And let's be honest, I mean, nobody looks at a glass of water the same way after this movie. Jurassic Park just was able to deliver an adventure-filled statement on hubris, ethics, and the limits of human control. And I mean, how about John Williams' iconic score? It's pure cinematic serotonin. The film broke box office records. It revolutionized digital and practical effects, and even decades later, few blockbusters have matched Jurassic Park's sense of wonder. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman chase a cryptic killer throughout a nondescript, rain-soaked city in David Fincher's Seven from 1995, a deep descent into madness, morality, and cardboard boxes that still haunts moviegoers to this day. Seven really became the cinematic equivalent of staring off into the abyss and having the abyss whisper back to you, "What's in the fucking box?" Directed by David Fincher with an unrelenting dread, this bleak masterpiece follows two detectives, the veteran Morgan Freeman and the rookie Brad Pitt, as they investigate a series of murders inspired by the seven deadly sins. It seems simple enough, but soon the mystery peels back like a rotten onion, with each new layer just nastier than the last. The rain never stops, the city is unnamed, but I don't know why, it always kind of felt like Chicago to me. Regardless, the hope level in this movie, it hovers like somewhere near a zero. Yet, despite all of that, I think Seven is still extremely mesmerizing. Freeman brings gravitas and quiet resignation to his role, while Pitt's impulsive rookie energy just explodes perfectly by the final act. Then there's Kevin Spacey's John Doe, chilling, calm, driven, and horrifyingly just convinced he's the hero of his own biblical message. He truly shows how intelligence and evil can be so frightening when fused together. I think Fincher's direction just really turns the urban landscape into a character of its own. It's grimy, it's decaying, it's morally bankrupt. The film's oppressive atmosphere just wraps around you like a wet newspaper. And the finale, well, if you know, you know. If you somehow don't, brace yourself. Seven really elevated serial killer thrillers and redefined them. It's nihilistic, it's unforgettable, and it made audiences walk out of the theater in stunned silence. In Fight Club, Edward Norton and Brad Pitt punched the 90s in the face in this nihilistic, subversive 1999 cult classic about identity, consumerism, and soap that probably smells like gloriously toxic masculinity. The first rule of Fight Club is you definitely talk about Fight Club, because this movie hit late 90s culture like a brick through a corporate window. Based on Chuck Palahniuk's novel, David Fincher's adaptation is a mind-bending descent into masculinity, identity, and consumer rage, all wrapped in sweat, blood, bravado, and nihilistic poetry. Edward Norton is a sleep-deprived drone spiraling into existential crisis until he meets this guy named Tyler Durden, played with a pleasantly greasy charisma by Brad Pitt, and what begins as a few guys in an underground fight club turns into a full-blown anti-capitalist, anti-consumerism insurgency, complete with an explosive finale and an unforgettable twist. A stylish, chaotic, and deeply quotable Fight Club would spark 1 million dorm room posters, including this guy. It's a film that both critiques toxic masculinity but is also co-opted by it, which is sort of the point of it all. Helena Bonham Carter's chain-smoking Marla is awesome, just adding an essential layer of emotional chaos and heartbreak to this testosterone stew. I think Fincher directs with a brutal elegance, turning soap making into a metaphor and IKEA catalogs into horror shows. And While it was divisive upon release, Fight Club grew into a cult classic that continues to provoke conversation. It's not a love story, it's just a violently delivered middle finger complete with a black eye. In The Silence of the Lambs, Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins share brainy mind games and talk fava beans in this chilling 1991 thriller that made cannibalism Oscar-worthy and forever redefined the phrase, a nice bottle of Chianti. It puts the lotion in the basket because The Silence of the Lambs put the psychological thriller genre in a chokehold and never let go. This 1991 Oscar sweeper wasn't just a crime drama, it was a disturbing, cerebral nightmare. Jodie Foster starred as Clarice Starling, a young FBI trainee who's just immediately thrust into just the darkest corners of human behavior and mentality, and she's without a doubt fantastic in this character. But I think it's Anthony Hopkins as Dr. Hannibal Lecter who steals every scene with just a chilling elegance, and with just about maybe 16 minutes of screen time, I think they said, he really was able to redefine villainy and elevate the meaning of terrifying. Director Jonathan Demme really does shoot this one with an intense intimacy, often placing the camera just uncomfortably close as if Lecter is staring directly into your soul, and it's super effective in creating uneasiness. The scenes between Starling and Lecter, I think, are a master class in dialogue, psychology, and dread. And meanwhile, Buffalo Bill's lurking in the backdrop as one of cinema's most unsettling serial killers of the 90s. I remember being brought to the theater by some older family members to see this movie. I was like 13, way too young to see this movie, and I didn't sleep well for like a week or maybe even a month. I mean, The Silence of the Lambs isn't flashy, but it's smart, it's patient, it's razor sharp. It became only the third film in history to win the Big Five Oscars: Best Director, Picture, Actor, Actress, and Screenplay. It still slithers into pop culture conversations decades later, and rightfully so, because it's a haunting descent into the minds of monsters and of the people who have the courage to face them. Keanu Reeves takes the red pill and bullet time would be born in The Matrix, the 1999 sci-fi revolution where trench coats, philosophy, and slow-motion kung fu collided in virtual style and changed the game of action cinema forever. Now, The Matrix didn't just bend the rules of action cinema, it roundhouse kicked them in midair in slow motion. The Wachowskis' mind-melting sci-fi epic dropped just before Y2K paranoia would hit its peak, and suddenly we were all wondering if reality was in fact a simulation or just a very convincing lie. This was one of the very first DVDs I ever owned. I watched it so many times for several months with friends, girlfriends, family. By my lonesome, it didn't matter. This movie was on repeat for a while. Keanu Reeves is Neo, a mild-mannered hacker turned messianic kung fu warrior. And really though, this movie isn't just about the trench coats and bullet time, as visually splendid and stylish as they were. It was really more a philosophical deep dive on control and destiny and waking up from complacency. Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus was all gravitas and gospel. Carrie Ann Moss's Trinity redefined badass, and Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith gave us a villain so smooth that even his disdain sounded elegant. And with its sleek cyberpunk aesthetic and its Eastern influenced fight choreography and just a reality questioning narrative, The Matrix became a cultural reset. The special effects changed in the industry. The dialogue for this movie would become meme fuel, and the red pill would enter the pop culture lexicon permanently. It was more than a film. The Matrix was kind of an awakening, and once you saw it, there was no going back. In Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Arnold was back. This time he was the good guy in James Cameron's 1991 action masterpiece where killer robots, molten steel, a little boy, and his nutjob mother are going to fight to save humanity from itself. Now, with this movie, James Cameron would create the sequel. Terminator 2 turned Arnold Schwarzenegger's cold-blooded killer from the original into the most lovable cyborg guardian in movie history, while simultaneously cranking the action, the emotion, and liquid metal innovation up to a 20 out of 10. Linda Hamilton returned as a transformed Sarah Connor, battle-hardened, paranoid, and absolutely ripped. Edward Furlong's John Connor felt perfect as the reluctant savior of the future, and Robert Patrick's T-1000 was a breakout, a shape-shifting nightmare in a cop uniform with the world's most terrifying poker face, and with groundbreaking CGI and massive set pieces like the canal chase, all topped off with an emotional undercurrent that sneaks up on you, and this sequel delivered the total package. But Terminator 2 was more than just shootouts and explosions. It had heart, sacrifice, and one of the most quoted catchphrases of all time, "Hasta la vista, baby," is a quote burned into pop culture like molten steel. I remember walking out of the theater with my friend and his older brother. We were all really just in awe over what we'd just seen. Terminator 2 redefined what an action movie could be, visually, narratively, and emotionally, proving to be the future of blockbuster filmmaking, and it's still one of the best action movies of all time. Martin Scorsese's 1990 gangster epic Goodfellas turned the American dream into a coke-fueled nightmare, with Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, and Robert De Niro slicing their way into cinematic history. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster, and with that line, Goodfellas grabs you by the collar and drags you through 30 years of mob life, all set to the greatest jukebox soundtrack ever compiled. Now, as an Italian guy, I've always had this unconditional love for mob movies. Oddly enough, something about them feels kind of homey, kind of comforting in a sense, but I'm sure that probably tells you a lot more about me than it does this movie. Regardless, though, Martin Scorsese's electrifying masterpiece here just perfectly tells the rise and fall story of Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, in just a world-class performance. He's flanked by Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, who are both fantastic as well. Pesci's Oscar-winning performance really is just pure wild-card danger in a press suit. One minute he's cracking jokes, the next minute he's cracking skulls, and his unhinged personality just keeps you on edge perfectly. The direction in this movie is pristine, as you would expect. Every camera move, every cut, every line is precise and propulsive. The Copacabana Steadicam shot alone should be in the Cinematic Hall of Fame, and overall, Scorsese here makes excess look effortless as he takes you on a ride of mob life. I mean, cocaine-fueled paranoia? Check. Jailhouse dinners with garlic sliced razor thin? Iconic. Goodfellas was a revolution in the form of a gangster flick. It was stylish, it was brutal, and endlessly quotable. It really did redefine the mob genre, while also reminding everyone that Martin Scorsese doesn't just make movies, he creates cinematic magic. In Heat, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro go head-to-head in Michael Mann's 1995 crime saga, centering on a high-stakes game of cat and mouse set to an LA backdrop of existential cool and legendary machine gun shootouts. So what do you get when you put screen legends Al Pacino and Robert De Niro on opposite sides of the law, then give Michael Mann and his directorial prime a camera and tell him to make the slickest, most emotionally intelligent crime saga of the 90s? You get Heat, an epic that turns the cops and robbers formula into high-stakes cinematic poetry. De Niro plays Neil McCauley, a cool, skilled, methodical thief who lives by a code. Pacino plays Vincent Hanna, a also skilled, caffeinated detective who eats pressure for breakfast and personal stability for lunch. And when these two titans finally sit down for a diner conversation, it's not just acting, it's action movie mythology being written in real time. This movie grabbed me instantly as a teen. It felt so cool and just real and gritty and lacking that usual Hollywood gloss. Man, really brought the just the seediness of LA to life perfectly, turning the city and its underground into just a moody playground for this game of cat and mouse. He delivers plenty of meticulous gunfights, particularly the downtown shootout that I think still holds up as a master class. And you get the supporting cast with names like Kilmer and Judd and Sizemore and Portman and many others, all helping to bring this dark but alluring world to life. Heat wasn't just about crime, it was about loneliness and obsession and greed and the cost of doing what you're the best at. I think Heat was very sleek. It was sprawling and surprisingly human beneath all the firepower, and upon its release, it was far ahead of its time. It was and is Michael Mann's best movie, and now I think it remains a timeless classic. And that's a wrap, everybody. 100 unforgettable films, 10 nostalgic episodes, and one glorious decade of cinema, from The Sixth Sense to Saving Private Ryan, Pulp Fiction to Point Break. The 90s gave us a little bit of everything and a whole lot of awesome. I want to thank you guys all so much for taking this countdown journey with me, rewinding through some childhood and teenage favorites, some film school staples, and some guilty pleasures that became legends. Whether you agreed, debated, highly disagreed, or made your own list along the way, the goal was simple: to celebrate the unforgettable movie magic that this decade truly did deliver. Now go watch a few of these again, find them on streaming, maybe on DVD or a Blu-ray or that VHS tape that's still hiding in a box down in your basement. The 90s never really left, and they're always ready for one more rewatch. I want to thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. Be on the lookout for the next series of videos coming real soon. I hope to see you guys all back for that. And until then, you know the saying, movies never say die.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?